Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode number 169. Whoa! My name is Colin Moriarty.
Hey!
Oh! I'm joined by my son, the green screen, and Chris Raygun. Chris, how are you today? Now you can be anywhere you want.
Yeah. Now, as you can see, I have a little bit of a green screen. So I'm obviously getting ready to do a lot of streaming over the next couple of days because there's a Halo flight happening. And these are limited time things. So, but you could put me wherever you want. You could put me in, on Epstein's Island. You could put me in Legend of the Hidden Temple.
Nice.
You can have fun with it. Put me anywhere. I don't care.
Barracudas, my man. I used to when I was in college, that kind of had a resurgence with people, and people started buying those shirts and wearing them. And I never got one. And then I felt like it was too late. And now I feel like it could be done again.
Maybe.
The purple monkeys, or whatever they used to call them, and all that kind of shit. Yeah,
it's never too late for a second wind,
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Hence the name Second Wind.
Exactly.
Well, it's good to see you, my friend. And of course, Dustin Furman, executive producer of Last Stand Media and co-host of Sacred Symbols. Who's this prepubescent boy on your shirt?
Oh, that's Shinji. See, people told me that I have a Shinji vibe on Sacred Symbols with the coffee and maybe looking slightly disgruntled. And so life imitates art. And so Holly got me this for my birthday.
Very
good. Nice. It's a very nice gift. I like it.
Well, welcome, and hope you're doing well, and hope everyone out there is doing well as well. That was pretty much just like an Austin Powers, allow myself to introduce myself moment, where I just used the word well 4 times in 7 words. But it's good to see you all, and thank you so much for being here. Hope PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5 is up your alley, PSVR, maybe a little PS Vita, although unlikely this week, as we have much to discuss. And I want to just start by letting you know, patreon.com/laststandmedia is where we are supported. You can get early ad-free access to every episode of this show, like more than 12,000 of you do, and we appreciate you supporting us over on Patreon. Also, the ability to submit questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas. Exclusive access to 2 episodes of Sacred Symbols plus our supplemental podcast each week. What episodes have we done recently? Let me think here. Let me look. Sacred Symbols plus, if I just go over on Patreon. Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, so we did one about PlayStation Mobile. That's fun. You guys just recorded a call-in show for Chris. That's going to go live soon. I have some interviews set up. I want to let everyone know. I obviously talked to Benji Sales. We already talked about that, but I'm bringing Brian from PlayStation Trophies on, renowned trophy hunter and trophy guide writer. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking to get, like I said, the people from Wipeout Pure Rush, to talk about the mobile offering that they're doing. And let's see, who else have I reached out to? Let me look at my sent mail, because I reached out to quite a few people. Oh, yeah. Should I mention this yet? No. I'm going to keep that one to myself. I'm going to keep that one to myself. All right. What else is going on here? Oh, merch. laststandmedia.shop. Leave us nice reviews on YouTube. Leave us nice reviews on iTunes. Subscribe to us on YouTube. And generally just be nice to me online. I appreciate that. Time to get into some correction. Anastas Liak wrote into us and said, "Hey, Colin, you mentioned that I should write in about this. On the last episode, you said a couple of times that Ghost of Tsushima was released on PC, which it is not the case. You talk so confidently that I had to double check if I missed the PC announcement. Now, you're right, I did do this. I don't know why I did that. Sometimes it just happens. Here's my problem. Where were you guys? Where were you guys? You say incorrect things, and I try to save you. And no one comes in.
Listen.
Yeah,
I heard it one time, but not multiple.
Yeah, I didn't hear it at all. I have no idea what the hell this, where you said this or when you said this. But if I heard it at all, I was like, oh, it's probably just a minor slip up, whatever. There's no way that this happened multiple times. Did it?
I guess. I mean, that's the claim. That was the claim from multiple people, which is,
well, they're all wrong. We would never do such a thing.
I would never make such an error. No, Ghost of Tsushima not yet on PC. I think maybe we're getting it mixed up because it is in that NVIDIA link, and obviously it will come to PC. But we're probably getting way ahead of ourselves. Dustin, you have a comment?
Yeah, here's the thing. Okay, I heard it the one time, but I don't know, Colin. We need to set the standard. If I don't want to be the actually guy anytime you hear something like that, and I think you were kind of on a good flow.
I appreciate that.
And I was like, well, it should be. I mean, it's obvious. I don't know. Maybe not, though. Here's the thing. The corrections, we love them. We like being corrected. We like setting the record straight. At the same time, some of these corrections
Pedantic.
maybe stand down a bit because
pedantic.
They've been flooding into my Twitch chat. People were like, someone came into my chat. Maybe it was this gentleman here, but saying like, "Hey, Colin said Ghost of Tsushima is coming on PC." I was like, "What the fuck are you doing? Write it into the show.
You're not my secretary.
Take it easy." So
writing correspondence.
Easy, huh?
Hey, take it easy.
Down, all right.
Oh, you know what I was thinking about recently? I have to say this because it's totally a non sequitur and has nothing to do with anything we talk about on the show. But Dustin, you said you were watching The Sopranos, and I forgot that when we first started Sacred Symbols, sometimes I would pull out on Chris, I'd pull out a Christopher.
Oh my God. That's literally just how my mom talks to me. I don't think she's seen The Sopranos, but it's just how that would trigger me endlessly if you said that to me in any. I can't do that. I can't.
You gotta steer clear of that whole that whole plot, that subplot with Christopher. Then, if you don't want to hear his girlfriend call him Christopher, Christopher, over and over again.
It's so accurate.
Oh my God.
I know people like that. I mean, that's why I think I do it right, because that's basically my family.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for writing in about that, Anastas. And yeah, let's leave the corrections to the thread. I have to remind everyone out there, by the way, some of you aren't reading your email when you subscribe to Patreon. You're not being thorough, and I need you to be a little more thorough. All inquiries go into the thread that is posted each week into the newsfeed on Wednesdays, and we delete that link, by the way, on Thursdays, and then it's gone forever. And then we put it up again Wednesday, and so on and so forth. If you write into the DMs, I always just direct you to that, but you can just save yourself the trouble and just write directly there. And we do appreciate your input. And Lins27 wrote in and said, "Hey, gents, quick correction from 2 weeks back regarding Alan Wake. Colin wondered whether Microsoft publishing deals have a time frame, but in this case, Remedy actually purchased the IP and publishing rights from Microsoft in 2019, and that's why both Control's DLC featuring Alan Wake and the remaster are allowed on other platforms." This is a great point, and I knew this. I think actually Chris and I talked about this on the show, but then I forgot, and then I just Googled it. I was like, is this true? And lo and behold, it is. It happened.
I totally forgot about this.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. It's a little bit of a late correction, but I'm going to allow it at this moment. Ethan Barcelos wrote in and said, "Hey, CDC, longtime patron, first-time commenter here. I wanted to bring up a small correction. A few episodes back, you guys had discussed the newly announced Marvel Spider-Man 2 from Insomniac. Specifically, you guys were pondering on whether or not it would be co-op. However, in PlayStation's blog post, they refer to it, quote, as an epic single-player adventure, end quote. Does this line confirm there will not be co-op? Do you think there's a possibility of a co-op-centered side mode? In my opinion, I think this will be a strictly single-player game that you have swapping between Peter and Miles during the campaign, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Thanks for everything you do. Hope to see you guys in person one day." Dustin, I want to throw it over to you first because I did go back and read, and I'm actually pulling it up now. I did go back and read PlayStation blog Spider-Man 2. This PlayStation blog post, I was like, oh, I guess they did say something definitive, but they really didn't. Because he says, and it's from Ryan Schneider, who's one of the leads at Insomniac, and he says, "We're so thrilled to continue the journey of both Peter Parker and Miles Morales in their most epic single-player adventure yet, coming exclusively to PlayStation 5 in 2023. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that says that it's not co-op. I think what they're emphasizing is that it can be played alone. And I would be a little confused by the appearance of both of the Spider-Men if it wasn't what he's saying, a swapping game, or more likely a co-op game. I just felt like that was an obvious thing. And if that wasn't the intent, that was very bad marketing, which is a little bit of a surprise for a studio and a publisher that does pretty good marketing. So what do you think, Dustin?
I think it is still, I'm in the middle on this because you're right that the marketing kind of did emphasize the two Spider-Men, I guess. But I think that the possibility of like switching between the two of them, I feel like that's locked in. Like you're going to be playing as both of them for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
The issue with co-op, and this is something I was thinking about, is that if I remember correctly, I know in at least Miles Morales, there are certain moves that slow down time, like to let you either hone in, like when you're shooting a web or something like that. So there would have to be modifications to the game in order to make it so none of the attacks take place and slow down time. Everything would need to be real time to compensate for the other player in the game. Mm-hmm. So if my estimation that if there is a co-op, it'll be a separate mode from the main campaign in order to make those changes to the core combat.
All right, we're back. We just had to make a quick cut there. I wanted to make a quick comment that it's because I stopped didn't record my backup, so we needed to start again. That's my fault. But I loved that when I came back into the room, Chris was immediately eating something. Like, I feel like they're always on the verge of having just eaten or are about to eat, and we are always just interrupting that with 3 or 4 hours.
I don't take good care of myself.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to comment on that. Very, it was cute. I thought you're always ready to go. Yeah. You're really ready to go.
I always got something, you know. I got a bag of donuts one day. I got like a bag of beef jerky on hand. You don't know what the hell I got.
I really don't.
I could have anything on any border of this screen right now. I could have fucking anything. I'll pull down a microphone and it'll be like, whoa, it's a cannoli. You know?
I'll be sick. I'd love that. How Italian of you. I have to say that I dispatched Micah the other day to the supermarket to get crumb cake because she was going. And I was like, can we get Entenmann's? Because, you know, it's a New York classic.
Yeah.
And they didn't have it down there, but they had their own Publix, which is a supermarket, their own crumb cake. And that shit was awesome. And then last night I had this really horrible revelation after I ate dinner. I just had the fucking tin in front of me and I was just eating it out of the tin. And I'm like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Not
I used to do that with the Entenmann's the chocolate devil's food cake.
Oh yeah. Entenmann's is a real joy.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's my dad does that. My dad is the type that will not use another plate. He'll just use the vessel that's contained, but it forces him to eat like a quarter of something because he's like, well, I don't want to get a plate out to cut it. So, and then he'll just eat like a quarter of a pie or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very Travis Furman move.
Shout out to Travis Furman. Ben Williams wrote in and said, hey, Fats, this one is mainly for Colin. You stated that you differentiate your product by not having relationships with and not soliciting game codes from publishers and Sony. However, you've mentioned multiple times that you do receive an unsolicited game code on occasion. Isn't it a little contradictory to criticize others in games media for receiving codes from publishers and developers they're friendly with while you also receive codes from developers you're friendly with? Doesn't that cloud your judgment on those games as much as it would any other person in games media, but just at a smaller scale? Keep doing the Lord's work. Thank you, Ben, for writing in and for not letting Hey Fats die. We can never let anyone forget that Joe Biden said that is still one of the funniest. That was just pure comedy.
Yeah, never forget.
So my answer to this is, Ben, no, I don't think it's contradictory. I have no problem with people having friends in the industry. That's obvious. I mean, if you work in an industry, you're going to have friends. People have many friends. And when one of those friends is an indie developer and they're like, here, take a code for a game. I'm like, sure. I mean, and some of them like Trigger, which I'm in the credits. I mean, it would be kind of weird for me to be like, well, I'm not going to take a code, but I definitely played it early and I definitely gave them notes and feedback. And now I'm not going to take the code. And, so I understand what you're saying, but the point is we're not soliciting these things. We're not going out and asking for codes. I'll give you an example. I had a conversation with Yacht Club over the last week, who I'm very friendly with. And, the guys who do Shovel Knight. And we were talking about totally unrelated stuff. And then they were like, hey, man, we're doing the Shovel Knight, dig game or whatever it's going to be called. So do you want us to keep in touch with you when the time comes? And I'm like, yeah, reach out when the time comes and we'll talk. They're my friends. I've known them since 2012. I'm not going to be like, no, I don't want to have anything to do with you. But then we'll figure out what happens. Very similar to Axiom Verge 2 with my buddy Tom Happ. He sent me a code and then I used it and I haven't even played the game yet. So I understand what you're saying, but the point is that we're not soliciting these codes. And more importantly, is that we're not soliciting them or talking to AAA developers and publishers. I have no problem with talking to independent entities and on occasion playing their games. I think you have to know that that's different.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Trigger,
which was made by 3 people. It's not really like the same.
And you disclosed it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Which is kind of the big deal. That's like kind of the big thing is, if you feel like there's so much of a conflict of interest that you have to recuse yourself from like reviewing or talking about it, or just like being upfront about like what the nature of your relationship is with the developers in question. Like I think transparency is like really the main, crux of this whole discussion.
Absolutely. And I was just thinking, Ben, to kind of ameliorate any concern you might have, I was just thinking about the games that were even on my console, right, recently, and like games I played. I just bought Tales of Arise, bought Kenna, bought Hades, bought Deathloop, bought. I mean, those are the last 4 games over the last month. I bought, Scarlet Nexus and Ender Lilies and Dodgeball Academia. I bought the Metal Gear Solid collection recently because I had to do that. I bought Doki Doki Literature Club and Returnal and Ratchet and Clank and Biomutant and Resident Evil Village and Outriders. Come on. Give me a break. Please give me a break. I can't take it anymore. And Sam Jackson wrote in, best known for his 90s hit film Pulp Fiction, as well as playing Mace Windu. He says, hi, fellas. Just a quick one. How have we fallen into calling PS Plus games and Game Pass games free? PS Plus makes a little more sense since you're paying for online multiplayer functionality and getting free games as a side, but Game Pass games are straight up not free. That's the service you're paying for. And what is bringing in subscriptions? Just a thought. I keep noticing you guys and others referring to Game Pass games as free, and it makes my left eye twitch every time. Thanks for all that you do and keep making the most high quality gaming podcast out there. Thanks, Sam. Appreciate your hard work, especially on the film set. Now, Chris, I want to go over to you on this one.
Yeah.
We have to be a little better about this, right? I mean, and I'm not saying we only, all of us in the industry. It is a word we bandy around. Subscriptions, for some reason, have come. I say it about Amazon Prime all the time. Free shipping. It's not fucking free. It's really not. I pay for Prime. You know, or, oh, I'm going to go watch the documentary they just put up on Netflix for free. It's like, no, you have a Netflix subscription. You're not. It's so. Do you agree? And how can we better talk about these things?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it is a bit of a colloquialism that like it's just kind of inevitable that words just sort of deteriorate over time. It's like the word literally, you know, like we're like that does not mean that it literally means the opposite of what it means. So it's like it's a very weird position where I think free is also kind of in that same thing, but I think also just in the context of media, specifically like games or even movies, sometimes I do like look at Netflix and I'm like, oh, sick. I get to watch Seinfeld now because Seinfeld is coming in October to Netflix. And I think, oh, I get to watch it for free. Only because I don't have to expend the effort of like going to a store, buying, like finding the DVD, like bringing it home, putting it into my thing. And it's almost like it's like maybe like effort free or something. And that's why it like kind of like gels to that. I don't know. There's something psychological about it, but I do think in general we are a bit too cavalier with that word.
Nice. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that we need more specificity. We talk about this all the time in the way we talk about games and the way we talk about genres, mechanics. We try to be a little bit more deliberate about that. And you're right. So I'm going to really try to check myself on that. And we'll see if we can keep that up. But it is an interesting point that Sam makes, that it is just kind of the way people do discuss these games. And to your point, Chris, which is funny, and you probably remember this, I think it was Merriam-Webster, or one of the great dictionaries, actually succumbed and changed the definition of literally. Do you remember that? Like this was a thing that happened a few years ago. So, and then people were like, so literally now means figuratively? So now what does literally mean? Like, is there a word for literally? Because now it literally memeans figuratively, and figuratively also means figuratively.
Yeah, well, literally, I guess just means figuratively with emphasis now.
Right.
Like exaggeratory emphasis. Because, like, look, I know a lot of people were freaking out about that, but I mean, like, languages change. It's literally how language tap. It is annoying to me, but also, like, I get it. Like, nobody uses that word the way it's supposed to be used. So, like, what do? You just have this stubborn book telling you, like, we should be saying ye old.
Yeah, imagine talking to someone like Chaucer or something. I'd be like, what the fuck are you saying?
Yeah.
You need to speak English, son. All right. Dustin. Oh, by the way, just speaking of that, just one other thing.
Chaucer.
Speaking of Chaucer, I was going through our exit surveys, which are always interesting. They're usually sad because it's usually like I lost my job, or, you know, I don't have time. But one of the people said, we're too anti-British. Oh my God. You did see that, right? Yeah,
I did see it.
Sorry to see you go. Dustin, what do you make of Sam Jackson's inclination that we should be talking about this differently? PS Plus, Game Pass, etc. Even PS Now.
I think he's right in that it would be more accurate for us to say it is included with Game Pass.
Yes.
Right? That would make more sense. There's a small part of me that it's like, yes, the game is free with Game Pass, with your Game Pass subscription. And this only, I would say, is maybe a note to consider in the fact that now with other subscription services like Disney Plus, there are items on it that are not free. Like if you want to rent a movie, you have to have the subscription and then you have to pay on top of it for the theatrical versions.
Right.
Will Game Pass do something like this? Probably not. But I feel like it's not entirely wrong to say it's free with Game Pass or free with Netflix, because it is free with the service. But overall, he's right. We should say included.
Definitely. So let's try. We'll see if we can do that, and we probably won't. But thank you anyway, Sam Jackson, for writing in. All right, just a few quick news stories to get through. I just wanted people to know. So Wall Street Journal published a story that says SEC is investigating Activision Blizzard over workplace discrimination practices. And so the Securities and Exchange Commission is obviously a very powerful organization in the U.S. government that deals with corporate entities, especially large corporate entities, and monies and conduct and all of the rest. So you can go read about this yourself. I feel like we're not really equipped to talk about this with our own knowledge. And I will say that again and again, people in the industry that don't know anything keep embarrassing themselves talking about this stuff. The only person you should be looking to really hear about this, apart from commentary about the fallout or whatever, is Rick Hogue, Last Stand contributor and lawyer. And he said on Twitter that people are misinterpreting this and that this is really not a big deal, and that the California action we've already discussed on the show is far more substantial to Activision Blizzard. So I'm going to take his word for it. You can go read about it. We don't really have anything to say about this here.
Mm-hmm.
But I did want to ask you about this one, Chris. Titanfall 3. Dexerdo, is that how you say it? I don't know. Wrote in and said that, or wrote it, didn't write in, wrote a story about community coordinator Jason Garza from Respawn, who's been in the news in the past. He seems to kind of just shoot it from the hip a lot. And he says this about Titanfall 3, which is relevant because Titanfall 3 was in the NVIDIA GeForce leak. He says, quote, "Don't get your hopes up, man. I've said this before. We don't have anything in the works. There's nothing there. We've got too many other games in the works right now," end quote. What do you make of that? Do you think so? We already kind of know that at least one other game on that list has been literally discussed by a publisher as in not existing, and that is Modern Warfare 3 remastered. But I understand from some sources that I know that talk to sources, so don't quote me on this. I've heard from people that I trust that the game may be done or in development and may never be released. I don't know why they would do that. I don't know if that's true or not. And I also know that EA has since said, since Jason Garza spoke, that, you know, Titanfall's part of our blood or some shit like that. But what do you think? Do you think we're going to get Titanfall 3 or no?
I don't know, man. Like, because they did say, and I saw this tweet earlier, where it's like, contrary to what some folks are reporting, Titanfall is the very core of our DNA. Who knows what the future may hold or something? And I'm like, well, what are you fucking doing then? Like, shut up. Like, for real. Like, I'm sorry, but like, don't go like, hey, there's nothing there. But also like, hey, who knows? You can't play both sides on this. Either you're going to do it and you have plans to do it, or you're not going to do it. Don't sit on the fence with this. It's annoying. Like, I think that there's no way in hell that at least some type of draft of Titanfall 3 does not exist. I have a feeling that there's at least something of that game that exists in some capacity. That could be like pre alpha or whatever the hell, and maybe it's on the back burner for, like, you know, when Apex started like really taking off. I believe that it exists in some capacity, but I also do believe that it's going to be a while before we see anything. But I don't know. I don't like this, like, this double speak here that's going on, where it's like, well, we don't want to get people's hopes up, but we kind of want to remind people that, like, oh, well, maybe you could get your hopes up a little bit, like maybe not too much, but like just a little. It just seems a little disingenuous and irritating from an audience perspective, and I don't know what else to say about that. Really, it's frustrating.
I find it weird just because I'm not a big Titanfall fan. I like Titanfall 2's campaign, as we've talked about many times, but
yeah, it's great.
It is a little peculiar that they dangle this game in front of people and its inherent connection to Apex Legends. Yeah. And then they just act like it would almost be preposterous that we would get another Titanfall game. I don't know. And I'm Dustin, I know you put that correct, or that addition into the document here.
Yeah.
Of course, Chris's point, of course, Titanfall is central to your DNA. This is just very EA PR speak. You have to say that because Apex Legends is a Titanfall game, technically, I guess. And
yeah,
do you agree with Chris that this is frustrating? Obviously, they're a big studio. There are over 300 people at Respawn now. They're making multiple games. I just don't know how many of them are on Apex, how many of them are on the new Star Wars game, and all of this other shit that they're making. So anyway, what do you think?
The question in my mind is the coordinator. It's the community coordinator, Jason Garza, that said this. I don't know at what level in a company a community coordinator is. The only thing I could think is that he spoke to the best of his knowledge, and it's possible that the higher-ups have a timeline of the next 5 to 10 years of Respawn loosely, and in their mind, they are doing a Titanfall game. And so they maybe did want to correct the record somewhat to be like, well, maybe not. I agree though that I don't know who's speaking out of turn here, the community guy or the official statement from Respawn's Twitter. Like maybe they were kind of like, yeah, you shouldn't be confirming or denying games on our behalf in a way.
Well, to me, it's just a breakdown of communication within the company,
Sure.
Because you can't, like, I understand it's very like flowery, like, PR speak to be like, who knows what the future may hold. But at the same time, to me, that is just like, I don't know, that's trying to have it both ways. And it's just, you have to have written that tweet out and sent it for approval. And the person who must know whether or not that's even something that would be worth saying would have been able to say whether or not that was true or not, So, like, to me, it's just like, yeah, I have no doubt that Titanfall 3 will exist at some point. I don't think it'll be anytime soon. But if that's the case, dude, then just say, like, don't expect that anytime soon. If you're going to pretend like, hey, it's a possibility, then why not just, like, confirm that it's a possibility by saying, hey, not anytime soon. We got a lot of other projects in the works. That would be more than enough or more than fine for everybody. Because it could be like, hey, it's nice to know that it's on their minds, but it's also nice to know that we don't have to constantly like scour the internet for the next like 3 years looking for any clue that this thing might exist when it clearly will. They're building their entire studio off of the Titanfall IP. They're not going to do Titanfall 3 ever. I don't believe that whatsoever. That's insane.
We'll see. I'm more interested in how many times they're going to split this studio. Like,
yeah,
what? Because remember, didn't they make a Medal of Honor like VR game too? Like they're messing around with like a lot of different stuff. And that VR game was only on PC, which was really weird. Never even came to PSVR, so I don't know what the fuck that was all about. But nonetheless, we'll keep an eye on what Respawn's doing. EA's crown jewel at this point, no doubt. Just a quick note being reported that, and this is for more Dustin and I, but we were talking a little bit last week about the studio Hexadrive working on Dragon Quest 11 alongside Dragon Quest 12 alongside what is it called? Armor Project, which is like Yuji Horí's company and all of the rest. But we have news now that another Japanese team called Orca is working on it. Orca worked on Dragon Quest 11 as well, and so we can look forward to some sort of collaborative effort. It might make a little more sense as to why all these companies are getting together for something brand new. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and Sacred Symbols listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/symbols. It's no mystery that a holistic approach to caring for yourself is key. It's obvious to take care of your body and to do all the things that entails. Exercising, watching your diet, seeing a physician, and more. But too many of you out there are neglecting your mind, your spirit, your emotional and mental well-being. And all of that is super important too. Much like being physically unwell, dealing with mental unwellness can be difficult, and it's best not to let it all stack up. A great way to tend to your mental health is with therapy, and BetterHelp's unique approach to therapy demands your attention. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's this deep level of customization that's at the heart of BetterHelp, and it's what I find so attractive about the service, because therapy isn't a one-size-fits-all endeavor. Sometimes people just want or need to talk to someone on the phone or via messaging or whatever else on their terms, and BetterHelp allows for that. I love that because in my own experience with therapy in the past, I found traditional stiff methods didn't do it for me. Go to an office, sit in a waiting room, I don't know, it all felt kind of unnecessary, like a series of barriers that didn't need to be there. BetterHelp deftly navigates around those barriers, and better yet, once you sign up, you can begin communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Once you do, you'll be able to begin tackling problems that may ail you. Motivational issues, depression and anxiety, a bad temper or out of control stress, and much more. Millions of people use therapy as an effective tool to cope, heal, build, and learn. And BetterHelp can be a wonderful way for you to experience all of its possibilities. I recommend BetterHelp, particularly if you're new to therapy, as there's no better way to begin your journey than in the most customized way possible. So try BetterHelp for yourself at betterhelp.com/symbols. That's BetterHelp.com/SYMBOLS. Get 10% off your first month of sessions at betterhelp.com/symbols. Better your mind, spirit, and general disposition with therapy by going to betterhelp.com/symbols. And I also wanted to note that Yuji Naka has officially gone independent. This comes from website VGC. He tweeted, he says, "Thank you for your birthday messages. I'm 56 years old. I've recently started learning how to program again, and I'm working on a simple game for smartphones with Unity. I'm making it by myself, so it's not much. but I'm enjoying programming it. I hope you'll be able to play with the app when it's available, end quote. So what do you think, Dustin? Yuji Naka going off into the sad good night after creating that Balan company or whatever they called it, getting a pretty nice sweetheart deal with Square Enix, and then making a game in which all of the buttons do the same thing.
This feels like that interview with George Lucas when he's like, "Oh, I'm still making movies. They're small short films for my family." Not quite. I mean, he said he's going to make some. He wants to release this app, but I don't know. The story of Balan is a very intriguing one. I would love to know, like, I'd love to hear the pitch for Balan initially, like from here, like seeing the game. It's clear that they had this grandiose idea for it. There's a book written about Balan, and like it's clear when you play the game, there's like some kind of narrative thread that is there, but it's not. It's just a mess, honestly. It's just a mess, period. And so I don't know. This could have been a situation where the project got away from him, and obviously it's on him as the director. It's his failure ultimately, but I wish him well. He's an OG. He deserves respect regardless of Balan, and I hope that he's just able to chill out, do what he loves, and maybe make a fun little mobile game.
Chris, any input on this?
Man, like that's a real shame. I don't know, man. Balan is such I'm with Dustin where I want to see a documentary about this thing. Like I want like in the trenches, like war stories. Like, yeah, we tried to get more buttons in, but we just couldn't do it. Like, just like these, like really, like you see like a glint in their eye of wars long fought. I think I agree with Dustin. I think he's obviously contributed a lot to the industry, and like one failure is not not the end of the world. Like people are always going to remember Sonic, and Sonic's huge still, like to the point where there's a sequel motion picture like on its way. So like he's made his impact, and I am so deeply curious about this game and what Dustin said, like what was the pitch and how did this get so fucking bizarre? Like
maybe we'll learn one day. I doubt it, but
why is it a musical? Like
very weird.
Dude.
there's so much about it. It is like one of the most interesting games that I will never in a million years play. But God bless him.
Wanted to throw this out real quick. Mick McKindy, who was a really well-known and still is was a well-known artist that did a lot of video game cover art and advertising art. You can look him up if you want. MICKMCGINTY, Mick McKindy. And he passed away, unfortunately. And he's best known for his iconic Street Fighter art. If you guys have seen basically anything from Street Fighter 2, all of that stuff was his art. And it's awesome. Even in the advertisements, he did a lot of stuff for Zoo Tycoon and Leisure Suit Larry. And he did Kid Chameleon, which is actually a very cool box art for Genesis. Kid Chameleon was a Genesis game. And that's a really dope piece of art as well. So anyway, I just wanted to shout him out and give him his due respect as he passes on to the next life. And of course, I wanted to end here with an inquiry because I'm curious what you guys have to say about this. Rajiv Bazu wrote in and said, "Hi all. What do you appreciate most from your favorite podcasters or talk shows? Pardon the Interruption is one of my favorite shows because of their banter, differing personalities, and viewpoints. That's a favorite of mine too, although I don't watch it too much anymore. Their ability to offer opinions, context for their views, while also letting their personalities and amusing anecdotes come through is unsurpassed." I agree. The only disappointing thing about PTI and other shows that are in more traditional media is that they're cut down by time. So they can't let the jokes come out. They can't sit there for 3 hours. They got to get their show done in 24 minutes, and that kind of sucks. But Chris, I'm curious, like, what have you been listening to lately or watching? Are you taking any influence from anything that you've been watching for your own podcasting?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm not really a podcast consumer, really. Like, I used to listen to podcasts a lot. I used to listen to the Rooster Teeth podcast when the main guys were on it. When it was Gus, Gavin, Bernie Burns, and some of those people back in the day, like a long time ago, like over 6 years ago now. And I think I watched a little bit of, and right now the only podcast that I listen to now is Conan O'Brien's Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, which is just like a really kind of interesting I just find that world of like comedians and like late night like super fascinating. I've been reading this book for a while about it, and I don't know if I take any cues from specifically from podcasters necessarily, but I do consume a lot of stand up. I watch a lot of stand up specials like in the background while I work, and occasionally sometimes those mannerisms will like bleed into me and I have to like make sure to like keep them out because they're not mine. But I can't say that necessarily that I'm big into the broadcasting scene to the point where I'm like taking cues. I did like the Rooster Teeth podcast back in the day specifically because it felt like a lot like a group of friends just hanging out, and it was like your funniest friends like telling like really fun stories and bouncing off each other really well. And that's kind of what I try to do with the Snark Tank, which is like my side show, because it's the only type of show that I like. So it's the kind of show that I would want to listen to.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I have like, specific inspirations as far as that goes.
Dustin, how about you?
When it comes to gaming, I'm not listening to any podcasts anymore just because, much like you, Colin, I don't want people's opinions, especially on new hot topics, to influence me at all. I will shout out someone who's well known in the industry who's now doing a YouTube show, Kyle Bossman. His channel, he does a show called Delayed Input, and what I really like about him is that he is able to find an angle on whether different gaming stuff, an angle that I've always never heard anyone say, and presents it in a very unique way. And to me, that's like an inspiration that I know that so many people on podcasts like Sacred Symbols, whether it's Beyond or any other, there's a million gaming shows right now. And when I was listening to gaming shows a few years ago, I remember that it was like hearing the same opinions and the same takes or the same angles on things 3 or 4 times a week. And so my goal, and something that Kyle has inspired me, is like, okay, well, what's an angle that is maybe a little different? And so that's been pretty cool for me to, hear. The other person, as far as podcasting is concerned, the only show that I really try to make time for lately is, of course, Joe Rogan, our boy.
Yes.
And I don't listen to, like, it's impossible, I feel like, to listen to all of his shows just because they're very long. He does multiple a week. But what I respect about him, and I feel like we have a lot of the same mantra with this show, is that he's unafraid to say what he thinks, but he does it in a very respectful way. And he apologizes when he needs to, and he doesn't apologize when he's feeling pressure to, when he knows what he believes is right. And he's not afraid to talk to anybody either. And he's very fair. He'll tell people if he thinks what they're saying is stupid, or he'll agree with somebody. And I always appreciated that willingness to just not care whether or not what you say is going to make you trend on Twitter or whatever, just because he's, stands by what he says. And if he doesn't, then he'll correct the record. And that's very admirable, in my opinion.
Yeah, well said. I don't listen to game podcasts or game shows at all either, with one exception. I listen to, or it's a show really, I watch LGR on YouTube, Lazy Game Reviews, which is,
he's awesome.
That guy is great. And the reason I watch it is because it's like very high quality, and it's PC stuff I don't know anything about. So I really like that guy. And that's the only thing that's ever, the YouTube algorithm is so on point that it knows exactly what you want to watch. And it doesn't recommend me any game stuff except for him. So I guess it knows at this point that that's all I want to watch. And to Dustin's point, the reason that I feel that way is because I don't want to find my stuff. I don't want to find some subconscious thing that was set by someone else. And that happens. And I would rather avoid that. And I think that that's what makes our shows stand out. But I am a big podcast consumer, and I want to give a shout out to a few that have definitely shaped our show. I think Around the NFL is probably, from my point of view, the biggest corollary to our show. If people watch or listen to Around the NFL, it is a very similar in spirit show to our show, but it's about football. And they're hysterical. They're fucking hysterical. They're ridiculous. They're insightful, but they go off on these tangents, and they have in-jokes, and they're just a lot of fun. And sadly, one of them passed away earlier this year, so it's just 3 of them now. But the problem with them is that they work for the NFL, so they can say whatever they want. They don't give a fuck. But again, they're confined to like an hour and a half. And that is a big disappointment. And as far as interviewing, I love that you brought up Joe Rogan. He's a big influence for me. Sam Harris, huge influence for me. Lex Friedman, huge influence for me. People that sit down and talk to other interesting people. And then kind of the banter, I get a lot from Crystal and Sagar. I get a lot from editors and so on and so forth. So a lot of good shows out there. But it's funny, Dustin, I make fun of myself for this once in a while when I come up with an idea and I'm like, here's what I want to do. I want to do a fantasy draft for video games. You know, and I'm like dead serious. And Dustin's like, everyone, there's like a website for that. It's like a podcast that does that. It's like, so that's how like ignorant I am about what's going on. But we're still going to do that, I think, in 2022, nonetheless. So thank you for writing in, Rajib. Hope you're doing well. Let's get into what we're playing here. Let's start with you, Dustin, since Chris and I are, no, I'm sorry. Let's start with Chris, since Dustin and I are connected with one game. So we'll get through your games first. What have you been playing?
Yeah, so I've been trying out a couple things. I am mostly done with Life is Strange: True Colors. I know somebody wrote into the show saying that it might be overshadowed by Deathloop, but I wasn't gonna have it. You know, I figured I'd try it out. Me and Haley have been playing it. She finished the last episode while I fell asleep. She's been playing it because I don't really like playing. I don't know, like something about like story-based games. It's like I might as well just help you make choices, you know. Or just like they're fun kind of co-op experiences. Sure. I find, even if they are like, you know, obviously single player. But I'm 4 episodes in, and I gotta say it's pretty good. Like from a Life is Strange perspective, like I know like the first game is marred by a lot of like really terrible dialogue. The second game's a little better, but it still has its moments. But this one, like, it looks really good. It's like animated really well. It's acted really solidly. I found like maybe like there were maybe 2 lines of dialogue that I found a bit like, ugh. But it was always like that like internal dialogue that happens when like you walk up to like a remote control. It's like, my remote control from when grandpa died, or like some nonsense, you know. It's hard to write those lines well. So I give those specific things a little bit more slack, but it's really well written and it's pretty compelling. The empath power is a little bit more interesting than I thought it would be. Still not as cool as like telekinesis in the second game or even rewinding time in the first one, but you know, there is fun to be had. I think it's like really real. It gets a lot, it feels a lot more mature than I think the previous 2 games did. I think the previous 2 games really tried a little bit too hard, but there's some moments in here where I'm like, damn, this is pretty dark without being like almost like, you know, sad porn, you know what I mean, where it's like I don't know how else to put it, but I feel like that makes sense in my head.
Sure.
But it's pretty good. I have 1 more episode to go, so the ending might suck, but so far I'm enjoying it. I think it's definitely the best one of the 3, which is pretty cool because it's a new studio taking over, so you know that's not necessarily the easiest thing to do. And the other game that I've checked out a little bit is Call of Duty Vanguard. I jumped into the open beta out of just sheer curiosity because everywhere on the internet people are dunking on this game like crazy. They're like, I hate it. I'm so bored. I don't know why they did this. There's a clip going around of just somebody holding a gun and it looks like an alien pine cone. It's just like glitching the hell out. It makes no sense what you're looking at. And it's like, this seems ready. And I gotta say, man, I played it and it feels like I think I'm missing something because this is exactly how every single Call of Duty game has felt to me for the last like 7-10 years. You know, like it feels identical. Yeah, there's some weird things like the fact that, you know, there are yellow dot sites in World War II. That's a little, you know, it's bizarre.
Sure.
Yeah, although I feel like the historical lens of, you know, Call of Duty specifically has kind of gone out the window in the last like decade or so. It's less about authenticity and more about just like kind of like making, you know, slight alterations for the sake of, you know, appeasing to like a mass market of 12-year-olds who are going to buy the game anyway. There is a really cool mode though that I should shout out, and it's an interesting way of like doing matchmaking, and it's there are 4 tiers or 4 types of modes that you can pick that are irrespective of game modes themselves, like irrespective of like deathmatch or capture the flag or anything, where it controls the amount of players that are funneled into a map to control the amount of chaos. So you can have like maybe like a 5 versus 5 map or something that's built for 5 versus 5 combat, but then you turn it over to like the highest difficulty, and that small map is now populated by like 3 times the amount of players. So it just becomes like this chaotic mess. And I think that that's actually like a really cool idea, even if it's like a really simple, like kind of novel, like it's not really innovative in any real way, but it's kind of cool that it lets you just kind of engage in chaos if you just kind of want to do that. I don't necessarily see that being a long-standing mode, but it's cool to have that level of flexibility in any kind of multiplayer game. But aside from that, nothing really too noteworthy. It feels like a Call of Duty game. I don't imagine that if you were a big fan of Call of Duty before this is going to turn you off immensely. But I will say World War II, even with these weird like yellow dot sights and, you know, a revolver shotgun, which, you know, whatever. It's, I don't know. I'm just so tired, but maybe you'll like it. It's free to check out. So
yeah, you might as well see what you think of it. I've been so detached from things recently because my best friend was here for a few days. So I haven't been reading anything at all, really. And I just feel like I've lost a few days where I'm never going to get them back. Not because it was bad time, of course, but because, I mean, in terms of information. Let's go over to you, Dustin. Says
Sure.
here you're playing Deathloop, Tales, and Kenna. We'll both talk about Tales last. So why don't you talk about Deathloop and Kenna first?
Sure. I am done with Deathloop. Well, I'm through the main campaign or story or whatever. I know there's different endings that are possible, but I really, really like this game. It is very, very good. And it's funny to me just hearing the conversation around this game because people are getting very caught up in the review scores. And it's kind of made me, I've known this for a while where I don't like review scores. Every once in a while, people will ask me like, how would you rate this game on 1 to 10? And I'll do it because it's just conversation. But I'm kind of actively thinking that I never want to put a number to a game ever again, even in conversation, because I hate it when I tell people I finished Deathloop, like either on stream or on the Discord or something, and people are asking me, well, was it a 10 out of 10 like GameSpot said? Like, no, I guess not. But I also didn't read GameSpot's review of it. Anyway, that's a bit of an aside, but I wanted to bring that up.
Sure.
I've enjoyed it very, very much. It is a very fun game. It has a few problems that I think that if you watched Maddie's review, he lays out actually very well, in that the game starts very open-ended. And from all the trailers, you hear about killing all of the visionaries in order to break the loop. And when you're talking about an arcane game, this is very exciting. It sparks this interest of like, okay, well, there will be all these different ways in which I can break this loop. And when the game starts, it does feel that way. But surprisingly, as this game progresses, it gets quite linear, actually. And to a point where I was kind of disappointed. And I don't want to get into it much further than that, but there's still a lot of open-endedness to this game in its individual levels and the gameplay styles. And that's why I still think it was a really fun game to play. I found a setup that I really liked. The blink ability, which is not called blink in Deathloop. It's called blink in Dishonored. I never remember what it's called in Deathloop, but that's what I was having the most fun, is the open-endedness of the gameplay. Like, I was figuring out there's an ability that lets you chain enemies together. So I would like chain them together and then like clear entire rooms of enemies at the same time. Yeah. And little things like that. And there's a bunch of abilities too that give you, again, that spark of, oh, maybe I can do this. Like the blink ability, whatever it's called. You can add a modifier that lets you swap your place with an enemy. And so I was like, if I put this with the ability that makes me hover in air, I can jump slightly off of a cliff and then pause and then switch with an enemy and have them fall to their death. Or I could like place a grenade, like a timed mine, and switch. That's, I think, where the game really shines. People are asking me, is it as good as Dishonored or Dishonored 2? My gut says no, but that doesn't take anything away from Deathloop because it's so fresh in a lot of different ways. This is a game I do want to see a sequel to. I want Deathloop 2 because I think that there's a lot of areas that they could expand and make this game even better.
Well, very interesting. By the way, I think it's called Shift, if I looked it up.
Shift. That's it. I never remember that.
I didn't play it. I just looked it up. All right. And it also says you're playing. By the way, I haven't played Deathloop yet. But it also says, so we'll get to that. And just to point out for those unaware, we're going to do a review discussion / spoilercast Sacred Symbols Plus episode for Deathloop, Tales of Arise, Kenna. Maybe we'll do Life is Strange. We'll do one for Tales of Arise, etc. So a lot of those are going to be coming towards the end of the year. And we'll get into it and spoil the shit out of the games and stuff like that. But you're also playing Kenna. Now, I bought Kenna, but I have not played it yet. I downloaded it. I learned that it requires 2 playthroughs for the Platinum Trophy, but I also learned that there's an easy way to circumvent that. That will obviously be patched out. So I downloaded it on my PS5 in my bedroom and then disconnected it from the network. Oh. And when I end up getting to it, I'll just play it all the way through without syncing, hope nothing breaks, won't go on PSN, and then I'll upload it and hopefully only have to play it once. Always thinking. But what do you think of Kenna?
I am so early on, but I know there was a lot of people asking if we had played it at all. So I wanted to get at least a little taste. This game is very, very beautiful. I mean, that's, I think, the first thing when people start it up is that it's just strikingly beautiful. It looks like, in particular, it looks like a Disney animated movie, but in a game. It definitely has the feel of, I don't want to put this in a negative way, but it feels like more of an indie game in that the way that, I don't know, like the moveset is a little limited and it just has a little bit, I don't want to say jank. I don't know. When I was playing around with it, I was like, this feels a tiny bit off to me, but maybe it's just the beginning.
I heard it feels and plays pretty old, and that people like that about it. Yeah.
That is a great way to put it. I'm glad you said that. But yeah, it's just I'm excited to get into this game. I think we need more games like this that are $40, 10 hours, and offer some kind of unique angle. I think this game's unique angle is that it feels like a modern PS2 game. It's so strikingly beautiful. So I'm excited to get into that more. And then Tales of Arise, I put that as I'm continuing to play it. I can really focus in on it now that I'm done with Deathloop, and I'm still enjoying it very much. But Colin, how are you feeling about Tales of Arise?
The truth is I'm only like 6 hours in, because when my friend was here and all that, I've only played for a few hours since we last spoke. But it's good. Like, it's really good. I feel like there are a couple of things that really stick out to me. I don't know if you're experiencing this too, Dustin, but the map is kind of nonsensical. It doesn't tell you where you need to go. I don't know if you've noticed this. Like, I was trying to find these like it's not even a spoiler. Like, very early in the game, you have to go to like these flame gates or something. You have to go like find this thing. And I'm like, where the fuck are they? I have no idea where you want me to go. There's nothing indicating on the map where I'm supposed to go. And I think we've come so far, like games like The Division and Outriders did this really well, I think, where it's like, just get you to exactly where you need to go. I don't want to dick around here and be looking all over the place. Now, I understand that that's what JRPGs are in a sense, and I'm, of course, a huge Tales fan, but I find, again, the little things, it's like, why are you not getting the little things right? The map needs to be more readable. The quick trial system needs to be better. And actually, there is a problem that people are experiencing as well, and Winston G. McDaniel wrote in. Sounds like a Civil War general, doesn't he? Winston G. McDaniel. General McDaniel fought down at Appomattox. Says, hey, CDC. It's rather obvious that Tales of Arise's currency, Gald, is given out so sparingly, and orange shells, an item crucial to healing, are so expensive. I realize you've been able to purchase Gald by the 100,000 in the PSN store. Is this a stretch in my thinking? I don't mind and actually like spending a few extra bucks on costumes or skins, but when a single-player RPG is designed around hard-to-find money that literally keeps you alive, it's a bummer. This is a little bit of a mini controversy going on with this game. I don't want to say it's a big deal. I don't really have a problem with this because, like, Rainbow Moon, which is a game I really like from East Asia Soft and SideQuest Studios from like 10 years ago, was like one of the first games I ever encountered where you could just go on PSN and just download whatever you wanted. Like, you just download all of the rainbow orbs, whatever you needed to upgrade your character, all of that. And the reason I don't really care is because it doesn't affect anything else or anybody else but you. It's a little different from the Nier Automata thing where you can go in and technically like buy the trophies in the game. That bothered me because it's the same reason why we make fun of those Retallica games or whatever they're called, where you're ruining the ecosystem. So that does affect everyone else. But in a single player game like this, it's like, I don't know. I hear you. The game is so different than other Tales games in a way that orange gels are suddenly like incredibly useful, because that's the other thing, Dustin. I was curious what you thought about. What do you think about the CP, like the healing point thing, where there's like a separate bar in addition to like other, like, so you no longer have like MP in the game. Now you have like these little orbs that allow you to like do a certain amount of like certain special attacks, and then they refill as you fight in the game. But then there's this other bar that's like this healing bar, and it stops you from using healing arts more than you should. And I'm like, that's an interesting. What do you think of that? I found that a little strange, because it gives you something new to upgrade, which is cool. Like you get more CP by doing things, but I don't know why they did that. I liked the more traditional nature of the old Tales games.
Yeah. So my perspective is purely from someone who's never played a Tales game extensively. I haven't really had a problem with it. I kind of didn't understand it initially until I was getting destroyed in this battle over and over. And I'm like, why am I not being healed? And I was like, oh, it's connected to this other system, which then I had some items that would give you like 30% more of whatever your total CP or whatever it is. My main thing with this game right now is that there's been a few instances where I will kill any or get into battle with any interaction possible as I'm going from point A to point B. And then I'll get to the boss and I'm like, I feel a little underleveled right now. And I feel like that should be a feeling when you are avoiding battles or you're not exploring a map, so you're not like grinding up. And so I'm having this weird feeling that I will have to go out and specifically just grind areas, which I'm not always a fan of, but I don't know. Maybe this game
I love
will
the grind personally, but
yeah.
But yeah, no, I totally hear what you're saying. I need to feel this game out more, and I don't know what I'm going to do. What I do know is that Deathloop has got to go in the distance now. I'll get to it before the end of the year. Kenna, I'm thinking about playing immediately, although I don't really know. And then like with Dying Light out now, there's really not much else. So now I can really sit for me. And now I can really sit and play with some of these games. But I was thinking, man, I'm so screwed because Knockback is totally screwed, which is our retro and nostalgia podcast, just totally screws my schedule up. Like we have to do Battlestar Galactica season 3 in the next few weeks. That's 20 episodes I have to watch of that. We have to do Metal Gear Solid 3 after that, so I have to play that. It's like, man, oh man, you sons of bitches, you have it too good. This audience has it too good. That's all there is. I have to make the shows worse.
Yeah, it's the only way.
Intentionally.
Yeah. Sorry, we have to sandbag ourselves. Dan Excel wrote in and said, hey, CDC, I like this question. He says, curious to know if you guys would rather be sitting or laying down when console gaming. And does your preference change based on the game you're playing? As I get older, I find myself wanting to lay down more when I play. I only sit when I'm playing a competitive shooter, and it's only because my hand-eye coordination seems to be better when I sit. Thoughts? Enjoy your weekend, boys. Thank you, Dan. Chris, how are you playing games these days?
I find that Dan is exactly where I'm at, where like I typically, like if I'm like raiding in Destiny or like doing trials or like playing Halo or something, I'm sitting and I'm leaning forward and I got the hunch going, because it's serious time. This is adults are talking time. But like, I don't know, with Life is Strange, I was like laying in bed, like I wasn't, you're walking around looking at doorknobs and, like,
yeah, there's no
where
urgency.
did I put that key? Yeah, there's no sense of urgency. There's no like demanding, moment in the game where suddenly your reflexes are tested, as opposed to like, most games that I play tend to be action oriented and tend to demand like pretty consistently almost the entire time that I'm, paying attention to what's going on. And I don't know. I find that that's exactly how I exist. Like if it's more casual, then I'm in bed, I'm laying down, I'm like lying sideways on the couch or whatever the hell. But, for the most part, most of the games I play, most of the games I stream, especially, even when I'm not streaming, I sit like hunched over like a goblin. Because it's just how it has to be. Like, I don't know who made that rule, but like, it's just, it feels right to me to sit that way. It's probably not good, but.
My experience with this is really just based on where I am in my life, like literally where I was in my life. When I think about middle school, I had like a TV in my room and a console, and I had to sit on the floor.
Yeah.
or lay on the floor because there was no other way the controller would reach and all that. Then when I was in high school, I had a bigger bedroom and we still had no wireless controllers, obviously then, or at least first party wireless controller. So I was always sitting Indian style on the edge of my bed playing games. And there's actually a few pictures I've shared in the past of me playing like PS1, PS2, Dreamcast, GameCube, and stuff like that. And then when I got to college, I started playing in my computer chair in my dorm. And then when I went to San Francisco, I started laying in bed and playing because I had no living room. Like we shared space. So, and now these days I have, a house. So I play games once in a while in bed, but usually in my living room, and I just recline in my recliner, and it's glorious. It is glorious. Where are you at, Dustin?
I know nothing of this laying and playing video games. This is something I've never done. Maybe a few times I would lay sideways on a couch, but my primary gaming space has always been in the living room. Holly and I are just not like TV in the bedroom type people. It's very tempting. But we've actually had a conversation.
You have other businesses. You have other business to attend to in the bedroom.
Yeah, a lot of other business, very important business in the bedroom. So, but yeah, we intentionally, it's like forbidden fruit. We don't want, it's supposed to be better to not have a TV because it tempts you to stay up late and stuff like that. So we're like, we've never had one. Let's just never do it at this point. Never have the TV in the bedroom. So Colin, I feel like you have the ultimate though with the Lazy Boy. That is what I want in life, is the Lazy Boy gaming setup.
Oh my God, it's perfect. I waited so long for my Lazy Boy because I ordered it, and then for some reason that is unbeknownst to everyone, it takes them like 4 months to get you your couch. So I'm like, okay. And by the way, it's even longer if you modify it in any way. Like I want a different fabric. So you have to like kind of get like one of their. And then they're like, yeah, we'll get it to you, in 4 months. I'm like, okay, I guess you're not that eager. But anyway, I was waiting, and it finally came, and it's just changed my entire life. I lay
great.
I lay like a beached fucking whale in that thing. And
that's your dream.
Oh my God.
That's your dream.
It's all coming true.
I've always wanted to I would have I would daydream about this too. It's like I'd be laying in my bed and I'd be like, man, would it be amazing to just lay here like fucking Emotep in a sarcophagus and just stare up at the ceiling and just have a TV in my ceiling?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't even have to, there's not a damn thing I have to do. That has been my dream. But then I always think about the rogue, falling TV.
Oh my God, that'd be scary, dude.
Yeah.
Because I told the story on this show about how an Xbox almost fell on my head when I was in college, because it was on like one of my shelves and they were like building a building next to us and it was just shaking and it fucking fell. I was like, the Xbox was like 20 pounds. The thing would have killed me.
The Xbox is, I think, if research is to be believed, I think it's about 18 metric tons.
Yeah.
That would be the ultimate irony if an Xbox took out Colin Moriarty before he became the world's greatest PlayStation podcaster.
It's like stepping on a fly. You never know what killed that fly.
It's like a time-traveling Xbox with a grudge.
Some man in 1540 killed an earthworm, and then Hitler didn't get into college 400 years later, and then there we were. All right. Oh, one more here from Michael Valdivia. He wrote in and said, hey, Colin, I've been curious about something. How do you manage your gaming time in football when the NFL season is back? Of course, gaming is your full-time job, so I was always wondering how you do it. I am a huge NFL fan, as you know. I never miss a Jets game. I watch football all Sunday and Monday night, of course. Thursday night, only when it's on Amazon, because I'm not going to get NFL Network. I just refuse to do it. So the answer, Michael, is 2 TVs. I take another TV, put it on my coffee table, tilt it towards my recliner. I have the other huge TV on the wall. I play games on that TV and I watch the football games on the smaller TV.
This is true. I can confirm that.
I've done this in front of you in the old place, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember being like, oh, okay. Yeah, I would probably do the same thing if I had anything I cared about more that was going on at the same time, but alas, I don't. We have a very diverse podcast, by the way, because we have somebody who's never missed a Jets game, somebody who's never seen a Jets game, and Shinji. So we really run the gamut.
It's an incredible thing we've created here. Very well said. Very well said indeed. Yeah, the only reason it's just that football games are live, so you have to watch them as they're occurring, because then it's going to get spoiled for you. They would a few couple times on Seinfeld, like they would tape a Mets game and then watch it later, and they were trying to avoid the score, and how easy that used to be to avoid. You could avoid a Yankee score for weeks if you really wanted to.
Yeah, I remember. I've been doing it for years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, now I get fucking push notifications from The Athletic when the Jets do anything. Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get into the news. By the way, at some point, Dustin and I are going to cut in here later because there is a Nintendo Direct the day we are recording this. And I have it on decent authority that there will be at least one thing announced that we want to talk about there. So we're going to take all of whatever is announced at Nintendo Direct and put it at some point in this news run, maybe right now. Okay, we're cutting in right at the very top of the news. We've lost Chris. He'll be back for the rest of the news that's not Nintendo Direct related. Now, we're obviously not going to talk about the Nintendo Direct news, but there was a trifecta of games at the very least that are coming to PlayStation that were revealed at this event, and so I want to talk about them. I've written the three of them up, and Dustin and I will have brief conversations as needed about all three of these announcements, and we'll start with this first one. We'll call it 1A. The Castlevania Advance Collection is real, and of course it's going to be glorious. As long rumored and leaked by various global games rating boards, the collection was confirmed during the newest Nintendo Direct, coming to PlayStation 4 imminently, so maybe even by the time this comes out. The Castlevania Advance Collection actually has 4 games within, not the 3 originally assumed. Obviously, Castlevania Advance brings memories of the awesome trilogy of Castlevania titles on Game Boy Advance, and all 3 of those will be here. 2001's GBA launch game Circle of the Moon, 2002's Harmony of Dissonance, and 2003's Aria of Sorrow. In addition, Dracula X is making an appearance, which is kind of random and incongruent with the styles of the aforementioned 3 games. Dracula X is the 1995 SNES version of Rondo of Blood, which came to the Japanese TurboGrafx 16 consoles, known as PC Engine over there, in 1993. That game later received a sequel, 1997's famous PS1 game, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which was essentially the starting point from which the GBA and DS games, Castlevania games, morphed. These 4 titles will come together, not unlike Konami's Castlevania Anniversary Collection, the awesome compilation that launched on PS4 back in 2019, combining most of the old school style Castlevania games from NES, SNES, and Game Boy. You'll be able to rewind and look at art and all of that. Now, as I said earlier, the big thing is, and we don't really know for sure, like you can download it right this very minute on Switch. Apparently it will be up on PlayStation imminently too, but of course they don't update in any sort of predictable way. They just basically put up games whenever they want. So nonetheless, very exciting. Wanted to lead off with this. Dustin, do you have experience with these games?
No, I have not played any of them. I've seen them and I've always heard that these are the true successors to Symphony of the Night, which is intriguing. It's like Symphony of the Night, probably the most beloved Castlevania game. And would you say that's fair?
Yeah, so I mean, without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, and Konami was able to recognize that and then relegated all of its future games like that to Game Boy, which I always found was weird. Like, was it? I'm always curious. I mean, this was not really in my wheelhouse, especially when Symphony of the Night came out. Was it like a slow burn on that, or is it like not? Was it not looked at until later as a classic? It always was weird to me that they followed up with those only on Game Boy.
Yeah, I don't really know why that was, because the same teams, or the same, I guess, heads, like Iga, worked on those games. He was the associate producer of Symphony of the Night and then ended up excelling to the very top for the GBA and DS games. So I'm not really sure what the point was. As I understand it, I think it was just a cheaper investment. They could annualize these things basically, which they did. I mean, Castlevania games were coming out not unlike Madden games for more than half a decade. It was great. I loved it. And then they just stopped with Order of Ecclesia. I think that was the last one. So this is exciting. Imminent release. Trophy's not up yet. The trophies for the next game are up. So we know that really is coming out imminently. But I'm really excited about this. Highly recommended. They come very highly recommended from your friend Colin Moriarty. And maybe you want to wait a week. I'll play and let you know if the ports are good. I mean, obviously we're scaling up in a major way to a huge screen from the GBA screen. Who knows? The games might look best on Switch actually, but I'll let you know. I'll report back, but highly recommended nonetheless. Let's call it 2A. In a shocking announcement, Square Enix has revealed a brand new remake of the 1991 classic action/god sim game Actraiser. It's called Actraiser Renaissance, and it's available as we speak on PlayStation 4 via PSN. For the unfamiliar, Actraiser was a late 1990 Japanese release on Super Famicom and was one of SNES's earliest, greatest games upon its Western launch in the fall of 1991. Developed by famed old-school Japanese developer Quintet, RIP, and published by one-time Squaresoft rival Enix, Actraiser received a poorly planned sequel on SNES in 1993, and other than some virtual console releases, all has been quiet since. But this truly special and unique game has been remade and reimagined in 2.5D with lots of new features and that amazing soundtrack intact, and it is available again right as we speak on PlayStation 4 this is incredible. I mean, I literally saw a frame and a half probably of like the very beginning. I'm like, that's Actraiser. And then lo and behold, I couldn't actually believe it, because when I said it, I was like, there's no actual way that's Actraiser. Actraiser was a favorite of mine as a kid and is a truly unique game that has never been replicated. And I'm not really entirely sure why. I know that game Sol Cresta was kind of trying to ape it a little bit, that came out a year or two ago, but Actraiser combines two just totally random genres and makes it work. And it seems like, based on what I was seeing in the video for the remake, that it's much deeper, statistically deeper and all of that, but that familiar, that beautiful music. I mean, Actraiser's soundtrack is beloved, very eerie and strange. Have you played this game?
No, but I've always wanted to, because it's never been easily accessible. They didn't include it on the Super Nintendo Classic. There's not been any. I mean, there may have been some kind of re-releases or something like that, but I've always wanted to check out this game, just because I feel like this game has a cult following to it, in that the people that have played it really love it. I've seen a lot of YouTube videos where people are like, you got to check out Actraiser. It's so unique, and you can see just like the love for this game. Clearly you have it. Now, I saw on Twitter, is Dagan Moriarty not a fan?
Yeah, he tweeted, although I don't remember him not liking it when we were younger. I mean, it was a game I always took to, but I don't remember him disliking it. So something must have happened. Now, Dagan has become quite curmudgeonly since he, along with Pat, he's been writing for Pat Contry for several years on his big NES, SNES, and N64 compilation books. And Dagan has just had to play so much shit. And so it's but it is a little surprising to me that this one doesn't shine through a little brighter for him in that respect. I mean, Quintet is an amazing studio. I mean, these guys, Actraiser was their first game, but these guys developed SNES classics like Soul Blazer, Robo Trek, Illusion of Gaia, the game Terra Enigma, which is kind of like a mysterious JRPG to American audiences because it never came out here, but it came out in Europe. And so they're gone now. I don't think anyone knows what's happened to them, but they were longtime partners and maybe even owned in part by Enix. And then they kind of just went away. And unfortunately, they disappeared in the late 90s, I think, before we really could catch up. And we obviously don't have connections to the Japanese industry, so it's probably a little bit better known there what happened to those guys. But for people that are unfamiliar, Actraiser, so imagine you're playing as God, basically, or you're being dispatched to this planet from God. I mean, who the hell knows? But you're this mighty warrior, this deity, and you play in, I think it's like 6 or 7 territories on this planet, like continents kind of. And you go down and you're dispatched by a god or whatever, and you go through a side-scrolling stage, an action stage, where you're fighting enemies with your sword. It's fucking dope. I mean, well above average in this regard. And then you fight a boss at the end. And then randomly, the game turns into a god sim, top down, where you're in the territory that you cleared. And you have to keep enemies at bay with your little archer and guy that, like, you have an angel that works on your behalf, basically. People pray to you and ask you for what they need. And you start building houses and farmland and roads. And you start getting rid of things that are in the way and all of that. And then towards the end, the enemies kind of always come back and you have to go back to the stage again, fight a different part of it and keep them at bay. It's awesome. I mean, Actraiser is awesome. And you're right, it's been inaccessible. The last time I played it, I want to say was in 2007 or 2008. It came to Wii Virtual Console and I bought it immediately. And so I have it on my Wii. I mean, I don't know where it is, somewhere in this house, but very happy to play this. And I must say, I was saving it for this. This is going to sound lame to people, especially considering we were talking just before about all the games we have to play. I mean, everything's kind of got to go back on the shelf now. The Actraiser and Castlevania, both out now. I mean, these are going to be massive distractions. I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to resist. And especially Actraiser. I just don't know that I'm going to be able to resist that. So I'm jumping in. I mean, I just wish, my hope is that when we're done here, I go back downstairs, refresh the PlayStation Store, and lo and behold, there it will be. But I'm not counting on that. Finally, and I'm most interested to hear what you think of this. Let's call it 3A. Interesting looking card-based RPG Voice of Cards, The Isle Dragon Roars, has been announced for PlayStation 4 by way of publisher Square Enix. The game launches on October 28th, but what makes it notable isn't only its unique playstyle, but by the fact that Yoko Taro is the game's creative director. Taro is renowned for his work in the Drakengard / Nier series, where he has often acted as director, writer, or both. He was the director of 2017's Nier Automata on PS4 and is also the creative director of the more recently released Nier Reincarnation, which came to PS4 earlier in 2021. As for the game itself, Voice of Cards is inspired by tabletop RPGs and is entirely presented as cards. The world is made of cards, towns are made of cards. You even see cards with character portraits during conversation. This is a cool idea, and I can see why they'd be interested in doing this. This doesn't probably take Taro off the board at all. It's probably incredibly cheap to make and for Square Enix standards, and it's going to be attractive to a lot of people that like Nier, even though it's not related. Maybe it has some sort of relation to it. I don't know. Maybe we'll find that out, but what did you think of this one? I was most curious to know what you thought of this, considering the inclusion of your boy.
I feel like I'd be willing to bet money that this will be connected to Nier in some way or another, just because that would be very Yoko Taro to do that.
And that would be cool. I think they should do some stuff like that as well.
Yeah, this is interesting. I'm always intrigued by card games that try to take it like many steps further than just a card game. Like when I'm watching this trailer here again, like it's even like your piece is like navigating over cards. Like they're serious. Like this game is only cards, and that's kind of an intriguing thing. And I can see Yoko Taro being the type of developer that's like, yeah, this is a challenge to work within. I will say that I think it's kind of interesting too that the music is like directly like Nier music to a T. And maybe that is intentional if this is supposed to be a low-key Nier, I don't know if spin-off's the right word, but
I would presume that would be the case if that is on the nose like that.
Right. And that's the thing. It's like I almost would be like, okay, Yoko, like why don't we switch it up a little bit if this is different? But again, maybe that's intentional. Either way, I'm gonna have my eye on this game for sure. I love like looking at this trailer again. I love the art on the cards. The characters look really, really awesome. It was just like a huge, unexpected announcement of something like this from him. And I think that's what makes it intriguing.
Ooh, for sure. Sorry, I muted myself there for a second because Treble was barking. I don't know if that was coming through. She's a barker, man. I'll tell you.
Yeah, I had like 12, not 12 dogs. It felt like 12 dogs barking right when we started. It's always right when you start recording. Yeah. They just go off.
It is. It's interesting. The only other hanging threads here, and we're recording this right after, so we just don't have the press releases yet. I've not seen anything come through about this. There were two other games that I think probably are coming to PS4, but I don't know for sure. Those would be the original KOTOR and Shadowrun trilogy. Now, KOTOR, as in the 2003 original from BioWare, ported by Aspyr, who is also doing the PC and PlayStation 5 console exclusive, is releasing the original KOTOR, which they brought, I think, 10 years ago to iOS. So they're the same studio, on November 11th. Now, I can't find any details on if this is only coming to Switch. On one hand, I would find it peculiar if that was true, because Aspyr's other Star Wars ports, like the fucking Episode 1 Racer and all that stuff, they're on PS4. They're on everything. So it'd be weird that KOTOR wouldn't also be on there. But I could also believe that they wouldn't want to do that because they have KOTOR coming to PS5. But even then, would be a PS4 game, though playable on PS5, ported from the Xbox original. So I don't know, but I would imagine that is coming. We'll verify next week. And then the other thing that I wanted to bring up was just the Shadowrun trilogy was really revealed for Switch at the Nintendo Direct for 2022. Obviously, this is a very XCOM-like, from my perspective, strategy series. I was reading a little bit about it in anticipation of this when we were about to record. This was, I think, an Epic Games Store exclusive on PC, and that apparently came out almost a year ago. So it would make sense that these games would now proliferate from there, and it would be weird that it would be a Switch exclusive. So I assume that the Shadowrun trilogy would be coming to PS4 as well, and that's due in 2022. So I wanted to point those out as well. So 3 games for sure, potentially 5 at a Nintendo Direct for PlayStation.
One
did
more.
I miss one?
One more. I just saw this on my Twitter feed. So Deltarune, which is the follow-up to Undertale from Toby Fox, he just released Chapter 2 last week on PC, and so it was part of the Nintendo Direct. I have confirmation that it is also available on USPSN for free. So nice. You can check out Chapter 1 and 2 for free. Deltarune. I have not played it yet, but
Chapter 1 was on PS4, right? Already.
Yeah. This is an update, I believe, to the game. So now it includes Chapter 2, both free. I think Toby Fox has gone out and said that the next chapters will be paid. But
Cool.
still nice. They're giving you 2 parts of this game.
Yeah, I
No
mean,
charge.
they'll get you. That's a great way to hook people if you're really confident in your game.
Yeah.
And they have every reason to be. People love that shit. So, all right, so 6 games then coming out of the Nintendo Direct, and that's basically it. So now we'll go back to the rest of the news, the show as it's constituted. Chris will come back, and we'll talk about everything. We'll talk about the listener inquiries. We'll maybe even talk a little bit about deep philosophical things. Probably not, but all right, we'll see you there. But we'll start with number 1 here. If recent rumors are to be believed, Quantic Dream, the French studio once best known for its close relationship with PlayStation, will be making a Star Wars game. This rumor has multiple homes, and each gives the story a little bit of texture, but trusty website Video Game Chronicle perhaps distilled the information the best. The 2 sources from the initial story are both YouTubers, one a French YouTuber named Gautaz, and the other oft-mentioned industry insider Tom Henderson, who's usually attached to Activision and EA rumors. We talk about him often. Gautaz notes that he understands that Quantic Dream is about to endeavor on a Star Wars game, while Henderson tweeted out an image referencing both Star Wars and Quantic Dream's most recent game, 2018's Detroit Become Human. Henderson later wrote on website DualShockers in part, quote, I was speaking to an individual who provided overwhelming evidence that he had contacts at Quantic Dream and reported that the Star Wars game by the studio has been in the works for around 18 months, end quote. Henderson also points to a random fan site's tweet about the Quantic Dream Star Wars rumor, which Quantic Dream itself liked, perhaps by accident before unliking it. Website Kotaku also points to Quantic Dream's opening of a studio in Canada earlier this year, which we discussed on this show as being central to this particular project. You'll recall that Quantic Dream is best known for what are essentially branching adventure games. This Star Wars project may actually be more in line with the games generally made in the Montreal gaming scene. Think Ubisoft and WB. Thus, this blows open the notion that we know for sure what kind of project this will be. Quantic Dream, founded in 1997, developed 2 games, 1999's The Nomad Soul and 2005's Fahrenheit, known stateside as Indigo Prophecy, in 2005, before coupling with Sony. Under PlayStation, in a second-party capacity, Quantic Dream developed 3 exclusives, one of which in particular being considered an important game on its platform. That game was the first of the bunch, the 2010 PS3 exclusive Heavy Rain, which was followed in 2013 by Beyond Two Souls, also for PS3, and 2018's Detroit Become Human, this time for PS4. Heavy Rain and Beyond both migrated to PS4. All 3 games are also on PC. Quantic Dream, which reportedly had a rocky relationship with Sony, announced its intention to self-publish its future projects in 2019, which would allow it to go multi-platform for the first time since the PS2 era. It's unlikely the Star Wars project is all it has in the works, and it has also made it clear that it intends on becoming an external publisher as well. Tony B wrote in and said, hey, Sacred Stack Boys, it's being reported that Quantic Dream is making a Star Wars game. At first, I was like, hell yeah. I can't wait to play Dantooine become human and become a droid grappling with its humanity. But then I read on Kotaku, quote, the game will have more traditional action gameplay and possibly even open world and multiplayer elements, end quote. Okay. So does a Star Wars game by Quantic Dream excite you? And are you excited to see the studio branch out and try new things? Or would you rather have a game in their more genre-bending, cinematic-oriented style? This was the big thing, was that the rumors are this is not what you would expect. And that's not a huge surprise. Quantic Dream did make a Canadian studio. They are a French team in Paris. They made a French-Canadian studio in Montreal, taking all of the talent from surrounding studios. And what do they make more than anything in Quebec? Open world action games and open world third-person shooters and things of the nature. Again, think UB, think WB, even think IDOS and stuff like that. So my answer is to Tony is I was also along the same trajectory. And Dustin, I want to kick it to you first. When I heard Quantic was making a game, I was like, this is great. Like, that's awesome. I love Quantic Dream. I know that there's mixed feelings about them on this show, and we'll talk about that. And we'll also talk about them in the industry at large. But I was more disappointed when I found out that they were going to make a more traditional style game, although then it made sense as to why they wanted to make this new team to begin with. So what do you think?
It's funny that this story comes up just because last night I watched the first 3 episodes of Star Wars Visions, which is the anime Star Wars anthology. And I was thinking, because I've been so flaccid about Star Wars for a very long time now, just because I haven't been very happy with how Disney has handled things, as with many people. And so it's interesting because the things that I've enjoyed the most are the things that Disney has had less hands-on, I would think, as far as, we know that Disney is very controlling and very careful with its properties, but the things that have branched out the most, like Star Wars Visions and to an extent, Jedi Fallen Order have been really, really cool. And so to hear Quantic Dream making a Star Wars game, just like you said, Colin, I was like, damn, that would be so cool. How many? Maybe you could follow multiple Jedi at the Jedi Temple or something, and it would be very choice-based driven. And I would love that. So to hear that it would be very much in line with other open world action games was definitely a huge damper for me. But you have to imagine that they would still put their Quantic Dream spin on it in some way or another. At least I would hope. Again, you don't want to be too judgmental of a game on a rumor right off the bat, but I would hope that they would use what their studio is known for and very good at to their advantage, especially when working with a property like Star Wars, where there's just so many cool possibilities.
What do you think about this, Chris? I know you're not a Quantic guy per se, and you're not a Star Wars guy per se.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if this marriage makes sense to you.
Yeah, I'm not an anti-Quantic guy. I think the issue with like the Quantic Dream spin on an open world game is that the Quantic Dream spin is that Quantic Dream gameplay, which you know what I mean? Like that's what literally defines that studio more than anything. We got a million like choose your own adventure type games or like oh different endings, you know, or like even RPGs with like, you know, like or dialogue options. Those aren't particularly unique. It's the way that Quantic Dream delivers those options to you and delivers that style of game to you that I think is really the spin that they have. And I don't know if that spin really works in an open world game. So I think you're probably just going to be getting something that is not necessarily by the numbers, but something that is a little bit more traditional, a little bit less Quantic than you would otherwise get. But I think that's not necessarily a bad thing because, I mean, we applaud studios all the time whenever they break out and do something weird and different. Like, I mean, you know, the Killzone guys made Horizon, you know, and now Playground is doing Fable and stuff like that. And it's like, this is just like interesting. It's interesting to let studios do that kind of thing. And like, why not let Quantic Dream try their hand at an open world game? I don't think it would be as standout, you know, because just by the sheer like uniqueness of what Quantic Dream already does, like I don't think this thing is going to be like, you know, if they really are trying to do something that is more in line with traditional, like, you know, the Quebec scene, you know, it's almost doomed to just be another game, you know, just, oh, hey, here's another title in the Star Wars universe. Quantic Dream just happens to be making this game, but anybody else could have done it. But it's important to let developers just sort of like experiment a little bit when they feel like they want to. Like I wouldn't have expected Insomniac to make a Wolverine game.
Right, of course.
You know, that was never something that I would have anticipated. So this could be cool. You know, why not? And it does, like you said, it does put into perspective like why that extra studio exists in the first place. Because I remember that was a little like, what? Like, it was a little bizarre in the first place.
I agree
that happened. But,
I agree.
You know,
it seems like they have three tendrils to this whole approach. Like they're probably making something else. It seems like this. I mean, Tom Henderson's a reliable dude. They're making a Star Wars game. I mean, I think we can pretty much conclusively say that. And then they're publishing stuff on the side, although I don't think that they've announced like their first deals yet. So we're going to start seeing their splash screen on games they didn't make, which will also be a fascinating thing. Now, I have to just go back to what Tony had said earlier, which is the idea sounds less exciting now that we know a little bit more about it. If what we know about it is true, because I literally was thinking about a game like Detroit and that sounded fucking dope and it's not because of androids and all that. It's just, you could just do something so wonderful and so small. And I think it's the small stories in Star Wars that are the best. Think about Rogue One. Yeah. I still think Rogue One is Empire Strikes Back level Star Wars to me. And I even loved Solo quite a bit because I felt like these were like kind of more interstitial, small, tiny little things that are through lines that just tell little stories about people. And they could have maybe done something here. So it's not, I am interested because I should back up and say that this is going to be a Quantic Dream game, recognizably, I think. And it would be cool if they did have some sort of kinetic action combined with the immense attention to drafting and storytelling that they do. Because all you really need to do is get David Cage to write the same kind of scripts with massive octopus-like tendrils going all directions, and you just make a different kind of game around that. And it can be done. It's much more difficult and much more expensive. But my assumption is that not Marvel, rather, Disney wouldn't be involved in this if they didn't think the goods were going to be there. So we'll see what happens. I'm looking forward to that. And maybe we'll learn more. And moreover, we'll learn more, hopefully, about a real, new license that they would make. And Joshua Taylor writes in about this and says, "Hey, SS Crew, I'll get straight to the point. Maybe don't call us SS Crew because
has some bad connotations.
With
I don't know if you guys are
Insomniac tied
history
up,
buffs or
yeah,
not,
with
but-
Insomniac tied up with licensed games for the foreseeable future, and the rumor that Quantic Dream is working on a Star Wars game, whether it's a PlayStation exclusive or not, that's definitely not. Are we going to see a trend this generation of licensed IP, seemingly of AAA quality instead of new original ideas? I'm not sure what to think of this trend, but wanted your all's opinion on this matter. Chris, you had mentioned Wolverine, which is definitely a surprise, not only from where it's coming from, but that it's exclusive, but also that the game's being made at all, and what it might be. There are a lot of surprising things happening. But you had mentioned, as I recall, that it is disappointing that Insomniac is losing every opportunity taken is an opportunity lost. And that's just the way it is. And so are you concerned about this licensing money overwhelming things? Because it seems like two different kinds of questionable money is coming in. Heavy licensing and funding money from the outside, and money of combining studios, purchases, mergers, and M&A, what they call mergers and acquisitions. So are you concerned about this at all? Because again, it's cool, but it does mean that Quantic won't make something else because of it.
I'll tell you what concerns me most about it is you have, Detroit Become Human, and that studio is now making Star Wars. You have, Sunset Overdrive and Ratchet and Clank, and now that studio is making Spider-Man and Wolverine. You have Tomb Raider, and now you have that studio making The Avengers. You have Hitman, and now that studio making James Bond. I am noticing a disconcerting amount of, specifically in the last year, just a large amount of licensed properties kind of taking the place of things that would otherwise be probably really interesting new IP. Not that these aren't new IP. I mean, they do qualify. Just because they're based on something else doesn't mean they're not new IP. But it would be nice to see something as off the wall and weird as Sunset Overdrive again, or even just to see like what would the studio behind Tomb Raider do if left to their own devices, or what would IO Interactive do if they didn't have to make another Hitman, and they could just do whatever the hell they wanted. Like it is a little disconcerting. I don't think that Wolverine or Spider-Man or even this new game, these new Star Wars games that we're seeing, I don't think these are going to be bad games. I think it's pretty safe to say, especially on the Insomniac side of things, that those games are going to be really, really good. And I even think that James Bond game that IO is probably in talks to doing is probably going to be really cool too, because I think that's a really, that's a pretty good match in my opinion.
Right.
But
it is.
It is, I don't know, there is something about it that is a little, I don't know, I don't want to say eerie. I don't know if I have the right word for it really, but it just feels like you said, missed opportunity. A little bit too much of this happening at once. I feel like maybe space it out a little bit. It was cool at first to see like trickling news, but now it's like, oh man, are there any studios that aren't making a Marvel or Disney property into a video game?
It's
I
true.
know there are, but it feels like it's less and less.
Well, think about how meta it even gets. Like, think about Traveler's Tale, right? It's like Lego, Star Wars, right? It's now you're like getting multiple levels down. And I think sometimes about these studios, I think about Rocksteady a lot, for instance, where they're very happy doing what they're doing. They're very good at it, but it does make you wonder, what would have Arkham Asylum been if it wasn't a Batman game? Like, how could that have been like something new? Could have Arkham Knight been something new? Could the new Justice League game they're making be something new? I'm sure that it's very comfortable working within the confines of these licenses. And by the way, I would kill to get some licenses, acquisition of them myself for my own studio. G.I. Joe, chief amongst them. So I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with wanting to work there, but I don't know. I do find it a little strange, the embracing of opportunity cost at such a rampant level, as if no one has any original ideas. What do you think about this, Dustin? Are you concerned, or are we making a mountain out of a molehill?
it's interesting that you brought up Rocksteady, just because I feel like they were the turning point. I remember the conversation around Arkham Asylum that was like, wow, we have a licensed game that's good and people are buying it and it's doing well. And just because before that, licensed games were known as like stinky, nasty, overpriced garbage that they just, crapped out every time there was a new movie. Like you think about like there was like a Chronicles of Narnia Xbox 360 game and stuff like that. And that was the way it was for literally years. All of gaming before that was licensed game, like crappy.
Don't forget Angelina Jolie's Wanted.
Oh, Wanted. What platform is that on?
That's a fucking deep cut, dude.
That was PS3 and Xbox 360. And you could curve the bullets, and it was hilarious.
It was called Weapons of Fate.
Yeah.
So,
oh my god, dude. Nice
in a way, the shift of licensed games actually being good is awesome because we get things like Spider-Man, right? And we do get these dream matchups of IO Interactive and James Bond. And so I'm of two minds about it. Seeing some awesome movie licenses get great games, hopefully, is very exciting. But at the same time, I want to keep gaming separate from movies. Movies have tried to mimic games and steal from them. We don't need movie IPs to make awesome games. So, like I said, I'm of two minds. I like it and I don't like it.
Well, let's embrace this idea that maybe we would like it, just for this hypothetical from Anthony. He says, hey, lads, with Sony working so closely with Disney lately and the rumors of former second-party partner Quantic also making a Star Wars game, which first-party team would you like to tackle a Star Wars game and why? I think Guerrilla could make a fantastic open-world Star Wars game. Keep up the great content. You know what two studios came to mind for me that Sony owns that I would like to see Star Wars games out of? And this is going to be like, what for people? But Media Molecule and Asobi. If you want to, you had brought up Star Wars Visions earlier. The reason that's so appealing and interesting is because it's fucking different. It's truly different. No one's ever seen anything like that. And imagine embracing the true cartoonishness. Imagine what Team Asobi could do with the aesthetic of Astrobot for a game about droids, right? Or like a fun children's platformer about, droids. Or think about what, what are the Concrete Genie guys called? Why can't I think of it? Pixel Opus.
Oh, Compulsion?
Pixel Opus.
Pixel Opus.
Think about like what, so going to Guerrilla or Naughty Dog or whatever, like we almost saw a Naughty Dog Star Wars game basically, which is what Amy Hennig was making at Visceral. I mean, we saw that scene of the Han Solo like character walking out of the building. It looked like fucking Uncharted. I mean, we know what, and it looks great. I mean, I wish we got to see it, but I would love to see off the wall kind of stuff that I think is very attractive to me. And I was saying earlier, just the spin-off movies have been really attractive to me too. I know that they just wrapped up that Ewan McGregor Obi-Wan show, and that's really intriguing to me too. There's just certain little things that I think Star Wars is so rich for storytelling, but I think it's the small ways that you tell stories. And Dagan and I always call it on Knockback small galaxy syndrome, where everyone knows each other and stuff. And I hate that shit. And that was what was so cool, by the way, about Rogue One, is that there was just so little connection to anyone. But rather the goal was the same. So I don't know. That's where my mind's at. Chris, who in the first party would be appealing to you? Would you like to see a Sucker Punch superhero Star Wars game?
I think they could nail it. I think those are obvious answers, though. Like, like Sucker Punch and Insomniac are the two that are like they would obviously make an amazing Star Wars game. Definitely. Like, I have no doubt that either of those two are equipped. But I want to get specific here, and I want to see. I want to see Terrace Kasai 2.
Wow, fighting game.
What I want. Yeah, why not? Like, it's astounding that we haven't had a Star Wars fighting game. Really, like, it's weird.
It is weird. Like, I agree. Like, Darth Vader's in one. Isn't Darth Vader in something?
He's in like
Injustice,
I think Injustice.
Yeah,
I think
something like that.
Wait, Dustin, do you know? Like, I swear. Hold on, let me look it up.
I'll look it up right now. Go ahead. Darth Vader Injustice.
Because I remember Darth Vader was PlayStation and Yoda was Xbox, or like
he's in there. He's DLC on Injustice too.
Yeah. But I don't know. It just seems like I feel like Arc System Works would make an awesome Star Wars game. I know that's not what we're talking about, but like, I don't know. I'm so disinterested in Star Wars as a general premise that it's like, I don't know if I have a really good answer outside of like, I think Sucker Punch could do a great job, even though I think that's kind of cheating because Infamous was basically like, what if Palpatine was, athletic?
What if Palpatine can make decisions? Yeah, it's an interesting one. Where's your mind at, Dustin? Do you like the more obvious choices of an Insom or Sucker Punch, like Chris was saying, or do you like my off the beaten path media molecule, give us a game kind of situation?
The game I personally want from Star Wars is a new Jedi Knight game. So a single player linear lightsaber game that you fight with a lightsaber in third person, and then it's a first person game when you use any other weapons. Was trying to figure out what team would be the right team to do something like that, though, from the Sony first party. Also, really strong multiplayer component. I used to play
Guerrilla,
Jedi Knight. Yeah, maybe it would have to be Guerrilla. Oh, yeah, because they have both first person and third person sensibilities. So, yeah, I'm always sad about Jedi Knight because Kyle Katarn in my Star Wars canon was the one who stole the Death Star plans. And he, in my heart, he will always be the true hero of that day. But
keep him safely tucked there.
I will.
Number 2. Praise for PlayStation 5's 2.0 firmware update has been pretty much unanimous, with people finally able to coherently read trophies, swap out SSDs, and much more. However, according to respected tech studiers Digital Foundry, the update may also boost game performance, full stop. As relayed by website Push Square, quote, the new update makes Sony's current gen system run faster in very select scenarios, and this can lead to small frame rate enhancements. 2 games they chose to focus on, Capcom's Devil May Cry 5 and Remedy's Control, both received a 1 to 2 frame per second boost by virtue of running on hardware with this new firmware. Sony itself isn't making any hay about this, but this very mild boost in performance could be a sign of good things to come, particularly if we've not seen all PS5 can potentially do. And the good news continues on the PlayStation 4 front too. You'll recall PS4 also received a major new firmware update 9.0, and this update can do something even cooler. It fixes the PS4's I don't know, is that CMOS or CMOS? I've never heard anyone say it.
CMOS is usually what people say.
CMOS battery issue. As you may recall, industry people and tech analysts were opining that should PS4's CMOS battery die and then PlayStation Store for some reason disappear, your PS4 wouldn't play games anymore. This is true. As Push Square notes, a verification process meant for trophies also has the effect of, quote, not being able to connect to PSN after installing a new battery, meaning you can't access your games anymore, physical or digital, end quote. In other words, it's a hypothetical problem that could have happened and now won't, thanks to PS4's firmware 9.0. So 2 big firmware updates. We talked about them a little bit last week. Dustin, I don't know if you have any additions about this. I was curious about what you thought specifically about the PS5 2.0 firmware kind of adding. I saw that it was described as like a 3% boost to game performance.
That is very interesting. I'm expecting that that's kind of going to be the extent of it. I don't think that Sony's ever going to come out with a firmware that's like 10% better frame rates or whatever. But seeing the fact that it's improved at all is something that is very, very cool. The CMOS battery thing is also, I think, very exciting as well. It's one of those things that's passively exciting. Just if you care about game preservation and things like that, this is a big deal. The fact that it's like a little button battery, it reminds me of people going in and replacing the batteries in a Super Nintendo game for the saves. Only the problem with the PS4 one is that it's like deep within the PS4. Like you have to really get in there to the motherboard in order to replace it. So the fact that they've listened to the audience, since PS4 is still very much a important platform for them, to go in and make this fix is important. So we got to applaud Sony for that.
Definitely. What do you make of this, Chris? Do you have any love for this PS5 firmware, PS4 firmware problem being updated? We didn't even report, by the way, the CMOS thing on this show because it was interesting, but it was so ridiculous that it was impossible Sony was ever going to let that happen. Like there was just no way. That's why I didn't report it. It just seemed ridiculous. Because by the way, it also requires for the PlayStation Store to disappear. That is a major part of the equation. It's not just like the battery dying and all this stuff. The PS4 must also never be able to connect to the PSN again. So it's like a ridiculous problem. And I just felt like people were it was at a time when people were looking for things to tear them down about. And I just felt like,
Yeah, no. I mean, anything that improves the experience on a machine is like, I'm in favor of it, obviously. Like, I can't say that I've necessarily noticed a lot of this personally, because again, I don't, the trophy thing is cool for PS5. I don't really look at the list too often, and I don't know if I can really say that I've noticed a 3%, increase, but it's good that it's there. It's good to know that Sony can kind of tweak these very real kind of hardware realities with firmware updates. It's like, it's not necessarily something new, but it's cool. But like Dustin said, it's not like they're going to release some update one day that's going to be like, wow, turns out ray tracing is totally free on hardware and it doesn't require any, you know what I mean? Like there's no magic solution to, everything. But, kudos. Like it's good to know that their software engineers are seemingly a little bit more savvy than they have been in, it feels like previous years.
Or they've made it seem like they were, at least.
They've at least, they've they're on their way.
People have these really lofty expectations for PS5, which is great. I am curious about their ability to bring backwards compatibility further back with a firmware update. I just don't know if they'll be able to create that emulation. That's all I want. Just because I feel like it will just shut everyone up and we can finally talk about something else. Like all of you are playing PS3 games, please. I was on the PS3 a couple weeks ago. I went to the PlayStation Store, sir. It took minutes to load. It took me like an entire day to get Metal Gear Solid 2 on that goddamn console.
Yeah.
Don't you tell me.
That's why people don't play it. If they could play those games on a PS5, though.
That is true.
I'll tell you what, man. I would be all over Soul Reaver like for days and days on end if I could play that on a PS5. You're out of your mind.
That would be nice.
Thinking that's not going to happen.
Rumors percolate that they're going to bring that series back. I don't know.
We'll see.
People have been saying
we'll see. Listen, man, if I can will that into existence, my power knows no bounds.
I still think your power probably doesn't know any bounds anyway, but we'll see. We'll keep a check on you. Number 3, time conspired against us during last week's episode of Sacred Symbols, for it was just a day or two after we recorded that mysterious publisher THQ Nordic revealed no fewer than 5 new games for PlayStation platforms, all in celebration of its 10th anniversary. As you'll recall, THQ Nordic rose from the ashes of the original, now deceased publisher THQ, which died a decade ago upon the spectacular failure of its expensive boondoggle, U-Draw. In the distribution of its IP and studios to pay its massive debt, European entity Nordic Games acquired licenses, teams, and even the THQ name, renaming itself THQ Nordic thereafter and buffing out its massive portfolio. Today, it's part of the expansive Embracer Group, under which THQ Nordic is one of several verticals that include Deep Silver, Saber Interactive, and much more. The thing is, THQ Nordic itself owns nearly 20 teams, and it's time to reveal what some of them are working on. These are the games, according to the official PlayStation blog. Purple Lamp Studios out of Austria is working on a new SpongeBob SquarePants 3D action platformer called The Cosmic Shake. It's coming to both PS4 and PS5. Belgian team Appeal Studios is bringing open-world action-adventure game Outcast 2: A New Beginning to PlayStation 5. It's a sequel to the 1999 PC game Outcast, which later came to PS4 in Second Contact form in 2017. As leaked and discussed last week, Germany's Black Forest game is indeed working on a Destroy All Humans 2 remake called Destroy All Humans 2 Reprobed. You recall that Destroy All Humans was relaunched by this very team in 2020 on PS4, and that they were previously known for the Gianna Sisters platformer series. American team Rainbow Studios out of Arizona is working on MX vs. ATV Legends for PlayStation 5. Finally, German team Piranha Bytes is working on bringing its sequel to 2017's action RPG Alex 2, to PS4 and PS5. All 5 games have undetermined release dates and even windows. Dustin, is there anything here that interests you?
It's interesting that they're doing a sequel to a 1999 PC game, Outcast. I've never even heard of this game, but I went and watched the trailer that they put out for the sequel, and it looked cool. I don't know. Also, was Elix? I remember seeing that game. Does it have like a fan following? It feels like a random game to get a sequel to.
Yeah, it does, but I think it did well enough. And I feel like it might have also been on PS Plus at some point. So maybe it got a little bit of a boost. I could be wrong about that. But yeah, I thought that was weird. I was reading a little bit about Rainbow Studios because I didn't know much about them, the guys that do MX vs. ATV. I used to actually like some of those games on PS2, especially when they were the Redbox ones and you get them real cheap. And I never read about them. Those guys have been making those games all the way back to that era. And I never really knew that. So an Arizonan team working on some stuff here. Anything pique your fancy here, Chris?
I mean, obviously, Destroy All Humans. Like we've. I think in the last episode we even talked about it. But like, I mean, I love Pandemic Game Studios, and the fact that we're getting a Pandemic Game Studios, and at the end of a pandemic is pretty cool.
Yeah, well, first full circle. Thanks,
full
God.
Circle. Yeah, thanks God. No, but for real, like I don't know, Destroy All Humans is just like such a weird game, and it just makes me happy that something that weird can exist. I was genuinely so convinced that this wouldn't happen purely because that game is so how do I even say this? Like, it's very of its time, like narratively, to the point where like I was shocked that this even got greenlit, because I would assume that they would edit the shit out of this, or like like retool the game completely, because this game is like, the whole plot about this, like the beginning of the game is like, oh hey, you're the first alien clone with a functioning dick. And that's literally the plot, is that he's just obsessively horny the whole time. Like, it's insane that this is real.
I love it. And you have to go to mid-tier publishers to get that kind of stuff now. Like, as always,
exactly.
really. So it is cool. I'm rooting for THQ just because I don't know. It's good to have this Embracer group is interesting. It's good to have some verticals that make offbeat games. And I'm especially intrigued by the SpongeBob game just because I feel like SpongeBob is just such a phenomenon that could that game sell like millions of copies? I have no idea. I don't see why not.
Yeah.
Especially if it's on Switch as well, which I don't know if that they're going to do that, but
yeah, maybe. But it's good to have like a place where like the middle market can live again, because for a while we just didn't have that. And I think the industry was a little bit worse because of it.
Definitely lonelier and sadder than it even is right now.
Less interesting.
Number 4. A report from YouTube channel GamerHub TV, as relayed by website IGN, indicates that respected port and preservation studio Digital Eclipse wants to fully remaster beloved fighting game Marvel vs. Capcom 2. It's important to note that Digital Eclipse was responsible for porting MVC2 over to Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 in 2009. They were known as Backbone then. And so it isn't a mere shot in the dark. The relationship with Capcom, Marvel, and the studio already exists. The question then is if it can be rekindled. Digital Eclipse's Mike Mika told GamerHub TV in part, quote, "We've begun some discussions on that right now, and we're trying to see how far we can go. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's really not up to us. So all we can do is make the best possible case and try to make it easy for them and see if they're interested," end quote. With fighting games perpetually hot and Marvel a larger series of properties than ever, it would likely be wise to go back to the MVC well. The Marvel/Capcom crossover actually began with X-Men vs. Street Fighter, which came to arcades in 1996 and PS1 in 1998. I bought that actually on PS1 when it came out. Marvel vs. Street Fighter came to arcades in 1997 and PS1 in 1999, followed by Marvel vs. Capcom in arcades in 1998 and on PS1 in 1999, and its beloved sequel coming to arcades in 2000 and PS2 in 2002. Interestingly, the PSN iteration of the second game came to PS3 in 2009, 3 years before the original MVC came to PSN in 2012. And while Marvel vs. Capcom had a third release on PlayStation 3 in 2011, and an ultimate version of that game in PS3 and Vita in 2011 and PS4 in 2016, the most recent game, Infinite, which came to PS4 in 2017, has a shadow of MVC2's popularity. That game, developed internally by Capcom during an era when Marvel was on its last legs, may yet see life if Marvel's owner, Disney, sees fit. It's important to note that MVC2 itself was taken off of PSN 4 years after it launched in 2013 and can't be played there anymore. So I don't know if you guys have anything to say about this. This is a game that's kind of special to me because I share a relationship with my brother over this game. This is a game that I really loved when I was younger and always liked playing, even though I'm horrible at it. And it's an iconic game. And it just makes so much sense right now. And Chris, I would love to see it come back, but I'm wondering if maybe the deal is bring MVC2 back remastered and make another new one, which seems to be a no-brainer. And I know that the ones they've made since MVC2 have not had the same resonance, but it's just because it was a different time. I also think they might have gone to 2.5D at some point or something weird like that. So,
yeah. I think that was a lot to do with it, to be fair. I did like the, the sprite-based kind of like 2D charm of, and it also just played better, like, because of that. There was something about it that just played, like, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, I think, is like a perfect fighting game. It is so good and so fun to play, like competitively or casually. It's just like, and that roster of characters is so what's those little Lego people?
Servbots.
The Servbots.
Yeah, Servbot, dude.
Yeah.
That game is so freaking good. And if they do bring that back, I'll be the first person like screaming about it, because that's like the only fighting game that I really, I have affinities for, like, Tekken 2. I have, like, that's a hugely important game to me. I used to play that with my sister all the time. And like, Bloody Roar is like a weird one that I really enjoyed back in the day. But like, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is so great. And if they remaster it, they better do it. Don't do this 2.5D shit. Like, I don't want to see Marvel vs. Capcom 2, but like, what if it's in Unreal Engine? Like, no, that needs to be as faithful to the original as possible. You need
Definitely.
that sprite work. Even if you just ported the original game and slightly up-resed it, I would be totally happy. Like it's such a good game. God
It
damn.
really is. And Dustin, what my brother, you guys know Dagan, what he always talks about with this game is how Capcom married these two different universes basically and made them coherent. Totally coherent. And that this game, I think, deals with scale better than any fighting game I've ever seen. I love how small Mega Man is, even smaller Servbot roll and all of that, and then how huge Juggernaut is or whatever. I think it's so neat. This game just I have an affinity for this game. Do you share Chris and I's love for it?
I've always felt that if I was going to really try to learn a fighting game, that this is the one that I would want to play. I just love the fact that it still uses sprites in a time where they could have made a crappier 3D one. And I still feel like even with the newer, like Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and especially Infinite, they just do not have that same charm. And I don't know, man. I just hope that they're gonna take us for a ride.
Yeah. Oh my God,
Just,
that song. That's got to make a comeback. That song used to make people want to blow their brains out.
I love it.
It just
man.
goes on and on and on and on and on. And what I was just watching video of Mega Man in it. I love that Rush is always with him. He's always running with him in the background, which is super cool. And then he like summons him. Oh man. Yeah. Let's see if that happens. That would be really nice.
Yes, it would.
Number 5. This was a weird one. Almost no one's talking about this, but we have to talk about it here. An interesting story has been quietly making the rounds. Publisher Bandai Namco may be secretly planning to remaster and re-release its Klonoa platformers. Klonoa began back in late 1997 in Japan and into 1998 in the West. It was a platformer from what was then at the time known as Namco before it merged with Bandai, and its full title was Klonoa Door to Phantomile. It was followed, or Phantomile, I think that's what it was. It was followed by a sequel in 2001 on PlayStation 2 called Klonoa 2 Lunatia's Veil, and it's these two games that are central to this new reporting from website Video Games Chronicle. The website points to Japanese trademarks filed by Bandai Namco, one for Wafu Encore, the other for 1 and 2 Encore. According to the website, quote, although Klonoa games weren't known as Wafu in Japan, one of Klonoa's trademark catchphrases is Wahoo, which Bandai Namco may have translated as Wafu. As for Encore, end quote. As for Encore, the site notes that Bandai Namco is using that titling similar to Sony and Director's Cut, having already released a few games with it as a subtitle. I think Mr. Driller is one of them. Klonoa saw a few spin-offs and handheld releases in the early 2000s and was last seen in 2008 in a Wii game simply called Klonoa, which I remember actually being well received, although I didn't play it. Do either of you have a heritage with this game at all? These were rentals for me back when I was a kid.
Yeah.
No.
They're kind of weird offshoot game. Like I played a little bit of the first one. I think I had a rental of it. And I played a little bit of it, and I remember liking it, but I had to give it back at some point. I was like, all right, well, I guess they can have the game back.
I guess.
If they so desperately need it. But, a friend of mine, he's a YouTuber, Caddy Kadikarus, did really good. He did like a really good video kind of like about Klonoa like a long while ago. And that's how I really reconnected with it. It's a really cool and creative, weird game. Like it's 2.5D, but in a way that actually makes sense for the time, and actually used kind of the fact that it was a 2D platformer, but the levels were wrapped around this 3D environment. So it was this weird kind of, I haven't really seen that style of 2.5D ever really since that game, or even, we think of 2.5D as even just Marvel vs. Capcom, or even Little Big Planet where you could go in and out. It wasn't exactly like that. It looped around. And
it reminded me a little bit of Crash, in a way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, a little bit.
How the direction would swoop and then go,
totally.
Yeah,
it's a cool game. Seeing, and it's just a very weird looking game too. I like it just because it's a very aesthetically unique title. It's very cute, and it's very, it reminds me of the chaos of the color schemes they use. Reminds me a lot of Strider, those old Strider games where it's just here's just a mess of color, and it's just awesome. I like that we have appreciation for these old games to the point where these publishers are thinking yeah, why not bring back something as obscure as Klonoa? If there's hope for Klonoa, then there's pretty much the sky's the limit on what can come back. is kind of how it makes me feel.
Tomba, yeah, I think Tomba is just like
Tomba, too.
I just don't think anyone knows who owns it. I think there's
That's
something
the
up with
question.
that. Yeah, I think that has to be the reason because it can't be that expensive to bring Tomba back. I know
Somebody
for a fact
owns
that it can't be that
Tomba
expensive.
and they forgot that they own it.
Yeah.
You know,
Dude,
like
Well, because
Let's try to
didn't some
buy
like
it.
what random company come out of nowhere and like re-release those games? And I
Monkey
don't know.
Paw
Monkey
Games.
Paw, right?
Yeah.
Well, you have no history with the Klonoa, Dustin?
This is a game I remember seeing at like Blockbuster and never playing it. I was actually just watching the gameplay and it looks fun. This looks very cute. This looks like a game I would like. So maybe if they do end up doing the remasters, I'll check it out.
You know what
Yeah.
it looks like? It kind of, and this might be a weird thing to say, but it kind of looks like if Balan was good. You know what I mean? Like if that kind
Yeah.
of style was done in a way that made sense.
Yeah.
Do you get that vibe looking at the gameplay?
Oh,
It's like-
yeah.
it-
I'm watching it now.
Definitely.
Yeah, that is a funny thing. Like I really feel like even these bigger publishers like Bandai Namco are finding that like look at the relationship with Konami and Konami's relationship with re-releasing old games, even as they're not making new ones. Like this is a good idea, and I think it's a great sign when Bandai Namco, which really has no reason to worry about Klonoa, is still going back and searching through their old stuff. And I think it's because every once in a while, like what happened with Bomberman on Switch and what happened with some other games re-released by some of these mid-tier publishers, is that they find that people actually buy them. That Bomberman game, whatever it's called, sold like millions of copies. It's like, so why wouldn't you just dick around and fuck around and find out, as it were? Finally, number 6 is a wrap-up. Website Gamatsu reports PSVR-enabled game Puzzle Bobble 3D Vacation Odyssey comes to both PS4 and PS5 on October 5th. RPG Rainbow Billy, The Curse of the Leviathan, comes to PS4 on October 5th. Tactical roguelike title Evertried comes to PS4 on October 21st. Arcade Racer Chorus comes to PS4 and PS5 on December 3rd. Racing game Gear Club Unlimited 2 Ultimate Edition comes to PS4 and PS5 on December 14th. The Disney Classic Games Collection, including Aladdin, The Lion King, and The Jungle Book, are all en route to PS4 sometime this fall. A couple of them are already there, but this is the collection. Old school arcade games Cotton Guardian Force Saturn Tribute Cotton 100% and Panorama Cotton are all coming to PS4 at an undetermined point later this year. And Chinese-developed action RPG Wu Chang Fallen Feathers has been announced for undetermined PlayStation platforms with a release year of 2024. The website also reported that adventure game Wanderer has been delayed and will now come to PSVR in the fourth quarter later this year. Website Push Square reports the long-awaited Swery-developed game The Good Life finally comes to PlayStation 4 on October 15th, while 2019's Jumanji the video game is coming to PS5 on October 22nd. And finally, the official PlayStation blog reports so-called social deduction party game First Class Trouble is coming to PlayStation 5 at an undetermined point in the future. And that's all we have for the news today. So let's get into, as tradition dictates, 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas to wrap things up from the audience over on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. Thank you for your help. Remember, early ad free access, etc. We'll start with Z-Dub, who says, hello. If PlayStation ever acquired Konami's IP, which of the following would be your preference? Number 1, PlayStation obtains Konami's gaming studios and tasks them with creating new installments of their franchises. Number 2, PlayStation has their current internal studios create games based off Konami's IP. Number 3, PlayStation purchases or creates new studios with the intent of making games based off of Konami's franchises. Dustin, I'll go to you first. Breaking out of the mold a little bit, that I feel like there's other options too.
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to say, is that I think that they could potentially plug in certain things with a first-party studio, but I would imagine more that they would maybe take their IP and connect them with second-party studios or even third-party, just like something that they can get the games exclusively to PlayStation and made to their liking and their quality standard, but not necessarily tie up their internal teams with IP that they may or may not want to work on.
What do you make about this, Chris? These choices are one of your own.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Dustin said makes the most sense. I think you'd want to have like almost a second party relationship with these kinds of things, because you don't want to task, like, I don't know, you don't want to shove Castlevania into a studio that just doesn't necessarily have the skills to do that. Not that they couldn't learn, I guess, but there's definitely studios out there that are already like vastly more prepared and far more facilitated and far more educated on that style of game that would make more sense to be tasked with making something like a Castlevania or like a Metal Gear even. So I would imagine that would be my preference. But of the following of the three that he laid out, I mean, I guess I would prefer like the option number 3 here. PlayStation purchases and creates new studios with the intent of them making games based off Konami games. That sounds a bit like the Xbox method of like, hey, here's the coalition, here's 343. I don't know if he necessarily means, studios tasked with Konami games forever or just for the short term. But I think if the implication is, for now, here's your task. Here's a new studio that we've built with our own, talent. And maybe there are a lot of people in, Naughty Dog or in Insomniac or in, Bend or all these other studios that might be totally drawn to making a fucking Castlevania game. And then maybe they'll come to whatever. They'll come to this new studio and make it. So that way you still have those teams doing what they love to do, and you have people doing what they love to do within the Sony ecosystem. That would be kind of those three, the most ideal choice. Because I don't know if I want, I don't want them forcing, again, Naughty Dog into Castlevania. Like, I don't think it makes sense.
Yeah, I'm wondering if by his third choice he means basically like more of a second party relationship, which would be the ideal, because I do believe that Castlevania, Metal Gear, etc. should and could live again, and that Sony might be the best steward of those. But I don't think that they should be.
Yeah.
I don't think that they should be permanent stewards. And we'll get into this more later with another question. But I don't want more big acquisitions like this to happen. I don't want Sony to buy Konami. I don't want Sony to buy those IP. I'm telling you right now, I don't want that. So
yeah.
I think that you can mature a single game in Castlevania and get it to market with permission. But I think first of all, Konami would be stupid to do that. And I don't think they will. I think that this is just a total. If I were Konami, I'd be eager and probably already actively licensing everything out. And I wouldn't be surprised to hear more about that soon.
Side note, though, I think Remedy would make a fucking badass Metal Gear Solid game.
Yeah, probably.
Ooh.
They certainly understand the supernatural element. That
they're weird enough. They're weird and quirky enough that I think like they could make something of that style. I think
I would love that
very faithfully.
That'd be great. Gnome Wizard wrote in and said, "Hello, CDC. Are you guys surprised Sony hasn't said anything about changes or additions to PlayStation Plus collection? We're almost a year from initial launch of the PS5, and all the games in the collection are still there. Do you think they will stay there permanently, or do you expect this this offer to change?" Thanks for the podcast, boys. Chris, what do you make about PlayStation Plus collection? I had this idea, I've said it fucking repeatedly, that they should be taking games in and out of this thing and always keep it at whatever 20 or 25 games. So maybe they do have the intention of doing that, but it is surprising this collection has remained totally static. What do you think of its future?
I think it's a little weird that it's like I expect like the first party games to remain, like obviously like the Sony first party stuff, but like stuff that isn't Batman, isn't like one of the isn't Arkham Knight on there?
Yeah, Arkham Knight's on here. I'll read out the games real quick. So Sony games, bless you, include second party games are Bloodborne, Detroit Become Human, Ratchet and Clank was second party at the time, and The Last Guardian was second party, and Until Dawn. And then first party games would be Days Gone, God of War, Infamous Second Son, The Last of Us Remastered, and Uncharted 4: Thief's End. And then third party games are Batman Arkham Knight, Battlefield 1, Call of Duty Black Ops 3, Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, Fallout 4, Final Fantasy 15 Royal Edition, Monster Hunter World, Mortal Kombat 10, Persona 5, and Resident Evil 7. So a lot of varied partners here. I mean, you have WB, Capcom, Bethesda is one of the partners. So
it's
what do you think?
Like I feel like I expect, like I said, I expect the first party to remain static, but like I expected like at least like the third party to shift around every at least couple months. Like it's actually kind of surprising that it's just remained that set. Like that Fallout 4 is there still is interesting.
Yeah, it is
to me.
Probably because it's part of the deal, like whatever deal they signed.
Yeah, but how long is this freaking deal?
I don't know. Like maybe it's a year. I mean, it hasn't been a year yet, so it could be literally a year. We'll find out.
You're probably right. That would make the most. It would be weird. I mean, was it 13 months? That'd be weird. So yeah, you're probably correct. I just anticipated it changing a little bit more by now.
Yeah, I'm interested, Dustin, in this the various partners: WB, EA, Activision, Bethesda / Microsoft, Square Enix, Capcom, Atlas / Sega. A lot of good partnerships here. But do you expect there to be more turnover?
So I went to the original PlayStation blog post where they announced it to see if there was any indication of whether or not they'd be updating it. The only thing that it says at the very end, it says check back with us on PlayStation blog for our monthly PlayStation Plus announcements. Additionally, you can check our website as details will be updated regularly about our PlayStation Plus offerings, including the PlayStation Plus collection.
Indeed.
So they're referencing updated information about the PlayStation Plus collection. Obviously, we've not seen any updates at the time being, but I think you guys are right in that if they're going to update it, I would expect it November 12th, which was when it launched with the PlayStation 5.
Kaz and Risk asks a question that we kind of got into before and said we didn't want to see more of this, but it's a hypothetical, and I think it'll be interesting to get some answers. He says, hey, CDC, with Insomniac making games for Spider-Man and Wolverine, which Marvel hero would you like to see them take on next? Colin, you've been watching the MCU on Knockback. What about an Insomniac Hulk game? I don't know about that. I like that movie a lot more than I thought I did. I will say that. I thought it was pretty good, actually. Dustin, let's stay with you. Insomniac, we know they're doing Spidey. I mean, Wolverine. They're making, their third Spider-Man game, technically, and they're now going into Wolverine. What would you like to see?
This is kind of difficult for me because I'm not super, as the audience knows, drawn in by superheroes right now. But I've always been intrigued by games that you can fly around in. So an Iron Man game, I think, would be cool. In fact, I'm curious about how he was implemented in the Avengers game, just because I know that,
I'm sorry, I was going to say, what about the PSVR game?
Oh, yeah, dude. That PSVR game, I never played the full version of it. I played the demo, and it was actually pretty rad. It seemed like it was probably biting off a little more that it could chew as far as having to have pretty low res graphics to support the PlayStation VR. So yeah, I'd actually, I'd like to see them try a crack at that again when the new PSVR launches. That'd be cool. Pretty awesome.
Yeah, that game came out, as people might remember, pincer. I think it came out on July 4th, didn't it? Something like ridiculous like that. And it came out pincered between The Last of Us and Ghost of Tsushima, and I think it just got lost there. But it was made by Camouflage, who were the guys that did that interesting stealth game Republic back in the day. Chris, we've kind of gone over this already, but I'm curious if there's just any hero that you would like to see.
Yeah, man, I'm kind of on the same. I feel like all the superheroes that could make for fun video games have been done already. I think Spider-Man is obviously the one that has like the most potential, just because the physics of just the way he moves around and the fighting style. It's not, it lends itself very well to video games. Wolverine also, like, somehow is like a really good video game character. But the fact that he said, what about an Insomniac Hulk game? That is borderline cheating, because I don't know if you guys ever played Hulk's Ultimate Destruction, but
I didn't.
That game was awesome. It was made by, I think, the Prototype guys, and it's the same exact game. Like you're just the Hulk and you're jumping around. You can pick cars up, rip them in half, and wear the cars as gloves to do more damage to whatever the hell you're punching. It was so egregiously fun and chaotic and just mayhem oriented that I think pretty much any studio making a Hulk game with the main focus being on just, have fun, like just a mayhem, like almost like a physics driven sandbox game with the Hulk would be astounding, only because it worked so well already. But I don't know, Iron Man, and like any character that can fly for me is always suspicious, because I just don't know of any game that's made flying as a person all that interesting. Like for some reason, like you'd think we'd have at least a few great Superman games by now, or like a few great Iron Man games by now, but we don't really have any outside of that Iron Man VR game, which of course in VR, like that would be awesome. But like on a traditional like game design standpoint, like flying from point A to point B isn't interesting. That's why like in Superman 64 they had you flying through rings. And even that was terrible. Like they rendered like 2 feet in front of you.
Yeah. Well, I like that you brought up Radical, which are the guys that did Prototype. I was just reading right now. You probably know this, but the last game they ever worked on was Destiny as a support team before they shut down. But people might. So the game you're describing, The Incredible Hulk: Ultimate Destruction, 2005. So GameCube, Xbox, PS2. But this is a studio that they did some work. Like they did a Crash game or two, I think. They did some of those Simpsons games in the mid-aughts, and then they had an unceremonious goodbye. Thank you for writing in, Kazdan.
Yeah, I think they did Hit and Run, right?
Yeah, they did. That's right. Tom Barber wrote in and said, greetings, Colin, Chris, and Dustin. During the live event, 4 out of 6 of the members of Last Stand Media chose a game from the PS3, 360, or Wii generation as their best game of all time. Spoilers. We're almost 10 years removed from the end of that generation, so I was wondering what your thoughts were on it as a whole, and if you think it will be remembered as one of the better ones we've had. Thanks for all you do, and keep up the great work. Dustin, PlayStation 3, 360, I don't think we really need to... The Wii's kind of its own thing, but you can bring it in there as well. It was so short-lived, really. I mean, it was sold for a long time, but really only relevant 2006, 2007, 2008 in that conversation.
Yeah.
But what do you make of that generation? I personally consider that a really, really good generation, and one of the best, I would say, actually.
Right. It is a great generation. It was, I mean, I guess video game consoles and games as a whole are always refining themselves. But you think about how like NES and Super Nintendo, like the huge amount of refinement. And then there was kind of a restart once 3D began, that we needed to be, refine what 3D gameplay meant. And it got a lot better from like PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 2. But I feel like maybe that is the generation where modern gaming fully matured. And we're kind of just continually refining with PS4 and PS5, which isn't a bad thing. But you have the perfect mix of like the technical abilities of the consoles. We'd figured out like what really good storytelling in a game. We had finally figured out what a console FPS could look like. And then you get games like BioShock, which is like the marriage of a lot of those things. And so, yeah, it's an extremely important generation, especially for Chris and I as teenagers during that era, and like really getting serious about gaming, and the birth of online being a mainstream thing as well. We owe so much to that era, and I know Chris has a lot of stories about Halo and how that impacted him.
Yeah, I particularly think,
just
I was gonna say, I particularly think Xbox 360 is the really seminal console for everything it did. But Chris, go on.
No, yeah, without a doubt. Like that was really the first. I consider it largely to be like the first real social media website, because like I think like or like the first social media was like Xbox Live, like on 360, because you had like chat rooms or whatever and online on PC, and you had like Facebook still in college campuses and stuff like that. But really like that was. I remember playing a game with somebody who wasn't in my house at all for the first time and being like, this is amazing. Like, I remember having my mind blown, like the first time you had native proprietary, like proper first party wireless controllers included, like there was an online infrastructure in place. You could download demos for the first time. You built your profile. And then on top of that, you had all of the refinements that Dustin was talking about. Like you just like BioShock. And I'm looking over at my shelf right now and it's insane. Like the golden age of Gears of War, like the peak of Halo, Borderlands, like BioShock. It's like, and like a huge amount of middle market stuff that was also like genuinely fun and then like really weird, like Enslaved, Odyssey to the West, Army of Two, like the Uncharted, like it's so insane how much of that generation is just good, and like how many gems are just kind of hidden there because of all the even just stuff like Limbo and the introduction of like the Xbox Live Arcade and like downloadable stuff like Dead Nation and like that generation, I think, also because it lasted so long and gave like a lot of developers kind of the time necessary to really master those pieces of tech, because those consoles were pretty, they're pretty weak. It's like 512 megabytes of like RAM or something like that. And they got Gears of War running on 512 megabytes of RAM. They got Uncharted
They got, by the
Like
way,
that-
on PS3, they got those games running like Last of Us and Uncharted at 256 megs of RAM because the RAM was partitioned permanently.
Yeah.
So they literally got
Yeah.
those, which is why games on PS3 that ran on 360 fine, like especially Bethesda games, just didn't run.
All the more impressive, man. Like it's just it really is a seminal generation. I think that's why like so many of the greatest games of all time like come from that, like Portal, like something
Sure.
so like you could only have something like Portal if you have years of FPS design behind you and to learn from, and years of 3D development behind you to learn from, to even formulate a concept that complicated and say, yeah, we're going to make this and people are going to love it. And of course they did. Like, I don't know. I don't think it can be, I really don't think it's possible to overstate. Like, because you could talk about it for hours and really like it would all be true.
I mean, I just think about, BioShock, Dead Space, The Last of Us, Uncharted, Infamous,
Fallout, Skyrim.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean,
Dude,
it's
unreal.
a lot. It's a lot. And then even with Wii, Super Mario Galaxy is one of those games, which is a absolutely phenomenal game. So
yeah.
and others that are on, from that era too. Wii Sports. I mean, you can't. It's certainly antiquated now, but that game was absolutely the madness in 2006 and 2007. Anyone
Left
who
4
was
Dead,
around then
Mass
remembers.
Effect.
Mass Effect, of course.
Whew.
A lot of good shit.
Damn.
So I consider it one of
Yeah.
the great generations. My favorite console is still the NES, but again, it's because I grew up with it. I don't think
Yeah,
anyone would
yeah.
look at that generation and be like, man, the NES and Master System generation killed it. It's a little different. And I would argue that the best generation is the PS4 generation. But we can save that for another maybe we should have a Sacred Symbols Plus episode all about what we think the best generation is, or maybe we'll do it live one day, because PS4 was the realization of everything the PS3 wanted to do but couldn't. And it actually worked. There was no Stockholm syndrome with the PS4 like there was with PS3, which we dealt with for so long. And it was the PS4 that opened our eyes and realized it didn't have to be that way. And I'll never forget that. But again, a lot of great games stranded on that cell processor, and hopefully we can get those over at some point. Joel Palmer wrote in and said, hello, Sacred Sim Boys. When playing a new first-person game, the first thing I do is look down to check if I can see my body. For some reason, this informs my immediate opinion of the game. In fact, it was the fact that I could see my legs in Battlefield that won me over the early Call of Duty games. Logically, I know it doesn't change the gameplay at all, but just knowing I have legs under me just feels better. Am I just weird, or is this a thing for everyone? The game that really got this right, surprisingly, is Outlast. You can see from the chest down. Thanks for the stuff. Oh, you're welcome, Joe. Thank you for writing in. It's funny because I was playing Metal Gear Solid 2, as I was talking about recently, and I was really surprised by one thing that games today still don't even universally do. When Snake is in a bathroom, you can see him in the mirror. Now, this is a really complicated thing to do because it requires the game to render the specific scene twice as you're walking through.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of games just don't waste the RAM on that. Even big games like The Last of Us, I think, and stuff didn't have any reflections in mirrors.
Yeah. I think Resident Evil Village, I think.
Maybe that was the one I was thinking of.
Yeah,
somewhat.
Because I remember there was like a mirror in Ethan's house that was like, that had a tarp over it. Like for no reason. Like I was like, why wouldn't you just not put a mirror there? It's like,
yeah,
I don't know. It's very weird.
It's I'm looking. David is not. Yeah, maybe there is. I don't know. I was trying to see if I was right or wrong about The Last of Us, but I noticed that because those are a little. Again, we talk about the little things, and even graphically, that just felt more real because I always noticed when I was a kid and still today when there's a mirror in a room and you can't see anything through it. It's just like, don't even put the mirror in the room because it's a massive distraction. So similar to what Joe is saying, where I don't look down. In fact, I hate that shit sometimes when you see it. And then sometimes you see a reflection of yourself and you're just a goofy, like rag doll that they never intended on you seeing at all. But you can see yourself in like the reflection or something of water. So Chris, do you do anything unusual like Joe does where you try to look down or try to calibrate yourself in some way into these worlds?
I don't know. I usually like when I start a game, I press every single button.
Yeah,
just because I hate looking at like, I don't know. Like I never want to have to press pause and look at the controls. Like I want to know like, all right, what is it? What can I do? All right, I got it all out of my system in like the first like minute or so. Like I know what everything does. I'm set. Like I'll figure it out on the way. But as far as like the first person thing, that's a weird thing for me too. That I really like. I like knowing that there are feet beneath me, even though it's totally psychological. But it's nice to see because it's just like this extra detail that doesn't really need to be there because, like, I mean, there are games that don't do that. Like Half-Life doesn't do that. Portal doesn't do that. Plenty of games don't do that. But for whatever reason, I always appreciate when a game does something that it doesn't have to, and it's, it serves the experience a little bit because it's cool. Like, oh, I get to see specifically in Halo, like you look down, you get to see like your armor, and like you kind of get to know. I think a lot of it was just like to know what team you were on. You could look down and like, oh, I'm on red team because I'm red or whatever. Just a way to organically check that without having to like pause the game or like look at like a UI element was pretty cool. I can't remember if Far Cry. Can you see your legs in Far Cry? I feel like you can, but I actually don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's been a minute since I've played it, but
soon enough, Far Cry 6 comes out. We'll look and we'll find out.
That's true.
Dustin, what say you?
I feel like Joe's decision to play Battlefield over Call of Duty because of the ability to see his body is a little extreme.
No, that's appropriately psychotic for Sacred Symbols.
Yeah.
That's not even anything. Come on.
Yeah. But I don't know. This is something I don't really think about at all. I will say that sometimes games can, I don't know what the right word is, too much detail. I'm thinking specifically of one instance, and it's Halo 4, where they include the rim of Chief's visor, and it limits your field of view, and it's so annoying, and you cannot turn it off. I hate it.
It's really stupid. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it looks like you're looking through the helmet, and it's like, I don't need this.
Yeah.
Like, just give me it's so stupid. It's whatever. I can't.
Because even if I was thinking about that with in the futuristic world of Halo, even if there was some sort of thing cutting off your vision, you would have some sort of heads-up display that would remove all of that. I would imagine, right? Like there would be certainly they're technologically advanced enough where your field of view would be infinite.
For me, it's just the matter of just like, I can see my nose 100% of the time, but I don't need, like, if I'm playing Call of Duty, I don't want to see like a nose in the middle of my screen just because that's what I would see.
Sure.
I'm obviously like tuning that shit out mentally because it's not important. Like the rim of the helmet is not important. Show me what's on the other side because this is a video game and I want to see what's on the fucking other side of it. There is too much detail sometimes, and people get a little carried away. Like specifically, this is a pet peeve of mine that I've talked about probably like endlessly in first person games where I don't know who made the decision where we went from this really nice style of interacting with objects where you walk up to something and you press the action button and the thing activates, right? The button goes up, the elevator door comes down, whatever. Now, for whatever reason, when you press that button, the game likes to remind you that, hey, by the way, you pressed that button. So we're going to slide you into a really detailed animation of your hand coming up and like pressing that button. And it's like a little slow, just so you can really look at, I want you to look at the hands that we made and how cool the hands look. You know, I spent a lot of hours. I've been crunching on this hand for weeks. So I want you to really see it for 10 whole fucking seconds before I let you play the game again. I don't know why this is such a common thing. I would much rather like the Borderlands, like old school style of just, if I'm picking something up, I'd almost rather it just be floating in front of me than have like this tedious animation of like kneeling down, picking it up and like inspecting my own hand as if I've never fucking seen it before.
I feel like a lot of these things are like mini loads, and I feel like we're going to see less of these things in the future.
Maybe,
certainly the heinous shit we're not going to see anymore. Grab my hand, move this barrier out of the way. At least once we get past PS4, we'll see how God of War and all these games run. But thanks for writing in, Joe. Finally, and I promise you to get back to this topic, it comes from Tick Dickler. It says, gentlemen, rumors are Satya, Microsoft CEO of Microsoft, I love that, is down to clown, as the Zoomers say, and Xbox is looking to put another publisher deal together. Real talk, their cash on hand is more than EA, Activision, and Take-Two's market cap put together. Assuming this is legit, which is a big if, are we getting a DC Marvel console split? Grand Theft Spencer, or maybe an antitrust lawsuit? Cheers. So these rumors are persistent, and I don't dwell in the Xbox space, so I don't have any idea what people are saying per se or where the sources are coming from. I want to just reiterate this real quick before I let you guys go, okay? Microsoft buying any of those companies would be fucking heinous with a capital H. And it would make people hate Microsoft if they went and did something like that. I'm telling you. They do shit like this at their own peril unless they bought one of these publishers and left them completely alone. No one is going to tolerate a reality in which Microsoft gets Take-Two and then takes Grand Theft Auto away from 150 million people that own GTA 5 or something like that. It's just nuts. And I think I've been pretty nice to Microsoft, and I think that they deserve a lot of the kindness that comes from this show. Not that they care one way or the other. I think they're doing a nice job. But here's the fucking reality of the situation. Microsoft has done very little with studios that it has nurtured and founded itself. And it is going around and grabbing things off of the market because it cannot satiate that demand internally. And that is not a problem that is happening with PlayStation. And that is the two things that differentiate the two. And by the way, if Sony came out and said, we're buying Take-Two, I'd be like, that sucks. Yeah. You know, a lot of people were rumored about the Square Enix thing and all that. I'm like, that would suck. I want Sony to make new teams. I want Sony to make new IP. And maybe you buy one or two teams that you worked with, which has always been their tradition. But no one can go and say like Sony has gone and really injured other companies with their acquisitions. And this is the kind of thing, Bethesda's one thing, but this is the kind of thing where I would find this completely unacceptable. And I think Microsoft must know that it will backfire on them if they push this too far. So Chris, go ahead.
No, I think I think they must be smart enough to know that. Like you would hope anyway, because I think even the fact that they got Bethesda for that price, right? It showed some level of savviness because I think they knew on some level that Bethesda, you know, Microsoft acquiring any publisher that big was going to cause like some controversy, whatever, like people were going to be upset, whatever. But I think they had to know on some level that Bethesda was the one that they could get away with the least amount of backlash. Because not only does Bethesda have like a bit more history with Microsoft than PlayStation, but they don't own like Grand Theft Auto, dude. They don't own like Madden. You know, they don't own like Call of Duty. You know, they own important things, like for sure. Like Elder Scrolls is huge and like Fallout is a big deal. But those games, like presumably like 76 and like Elder Scrolls Online will persist on other platforms anyway. I think on some level they knew that Bethesda was the one that they could get away with. So if they're looking at EA or Activision or Take-Two, I think it's a unanimous sentiment on this show that is just too much. And I've said, like you said yourself about Square Enix, I've said multiple times that like you have to consider, like from the Sony perspective, like when we were talking about, oh, what studio could Sony buy? It's like you have to play that carefully because you don't, like you could get a huge game for your own platform, but that could also be a massive blow to your image and to the way that the consumer base perceives you. And that is also very valuable. Image is in large part everything, you know? So I don't know, this would be too much. And by the way, we would both say that about either like PlayStation, Microsoft, Nintendo.
Absolutely.
Anybody buying those publishers, it's just, that's too much taken away from everybody to really get gung-ho about it.
Right. And I think too, Chris, that because the argument's being like, well, maybe they'll leave everything out there. And I would imagine that if Microsoft really went and bought EA, for instance, that there's no way that they would just be like, okay, now Madden's proprietary to Xbox. I think what the argument would be like, well, now we have these games on Game Pass. But to me, I'm like, but what are you doing? I just like, what would even be the point of that? And I must say that I feel like Sony, I feel like this Fire Sprite purchase was the first time Sony ever bought a team where I'm like, what? And that's not that, no offense to those guys. I've not played the Persistence. It might be a great game, but that was the first time Sony acquired a studio where I rubbed my eyes and I was like, well, who the fuck thought that they were going to buy Fire Sprite? But when I look at Xbox, there are some teams where I'm like, come on, man, you guys are just buying things. And I think that when you look at some of the teams, like Undead Labs made a lot of sense, right? But why would you buy like Ninja Theory? What was the point of that? What was the point of Double Fine? I mean, obviously Psychonauts 2 is really great, but in terms of culture. And so I just think that would be another move like that, where you're just grabbing things because you can. And I should say I'm a Microsoft shareholder, so I want them to make as much money as they possibly can. But Dustin, I just feel like the cost is high and the risk is high. They're not the market leader at all. So it's not like they would get a lot of respect by being like, oh, we're already all there. Well, now EA's with us or whatever. I just feel like they got to be really careful about this. And I agree with Chris. I think Chris said it very well. Bethesda was like the edge And even that, I felt like, see, I personally didn't care about that very much. And I know that a lot of people did, but I was just like, I don't know, man. I'll miss id. I'll definitely miss machine games, but I'll live. But for people that play WRPGs or certain games, that was a huge loss and certainly injured them too. So anyway, what do you think?
I always find it funny thinking about people. We check the fanboyism at the door for this show, but we got to call it out sometimes. There's a lot of people that want to argue about one of Microsoft's greatest strengths is their ability to open up their wallet and buy things for their console. And from my perspective, they have to buy things because they're so terrible at managing their own teams. Look at the last decade. Okay, look at since the entire Xbox One generation, even slightly before that. Look at games like the Crackdown, right? Crackdown 3. Look at how they handled Fable. Look at how they handled their most valuable IP with Halo since Bungie's been gone.
Plus Phantom Dust canceled, Scalebound canceled.
I was about to mention that.
Yeah.
They can't even handle their second-party relationships. So what do? They resort to just buying studios, and you better pray that they don't get involved with the management of these teams, because look at the history. Just look at it, right?
Mhm.
And I think that they very wisely, at least for now, said that they're going to let Bethesda continue to be like a sub-managed brand, because you better hope that they don't get involved, because they continually are screwing up over and over again. So, yeah, I don't want Microsoft purchasing anybody for that reason, along with a multitude of others. And I'm glad you brought up, Colin, the fact that people have pointed out or tried to bring to us, like, well, if Sony was buying Square Enix, you wouldn't have any problem with it. It's like, no,
I would have a huge problem with it.
we don't want a consolidation of the industry. We don't want that. We want to see strong independent companies that are out there competing with one another. That's how we get the best games for everyone involved. So I don't know. I don't want to come off as the guy on the PlayStation podcast that's ranting about
whatever
Xbox buying stuff, but like, just look at the history. That's all I'm saying.
No, I agree.
I think we're making a lot of sense, and I don't think anything that we're saying is like out of pocket or like completely like anybody listening to this you'd have to be insane not to understand like what we're saying, you know. And I think it's just not good for the industry to have this much consolidation. Like, and again, like Bethesda was the edge of what you could get away with, definitely. And I think that's why they did it. I think they know that. So if these rumors are true, then they're getting a little bit out of touch.
Yeah, that will
not go over well.
No, it won't. It won't. It just definitely won't. People that are wishing these things into existence better hope in some way that it doesn't happen, because I have no problem with Microsoft going on and buying some key pieces that they feel they need, but Sony will do the same, but big publishers, come on, man. And I got to give it up to Sony. They're making more strategic investments. It seems like just a little bit in Discord, a little bit with Epic, a little, well, actually more than a little bit with Discord, but a little bit with Epic and so on and so forth. And you have to, and Evo, and they're making like a foundation, and they realize that you can only release so many games anyway. I actually personally think Microsoft Studios, if you include Bethesda, is big enough. It's a big ass team. It's like 30 teams.
Yeah.
I don't know how many more teams you need than that. So we'll see. I don't want to get too ranty, but we fillet Microsoft a lot on this podcast because they've been doing a really nice job, and they need to be taken down a notch once in a while, and I'll fucking take them down.
Yeah. And also this criticism, and also just this criticism is just really from the perspective of just like, keep doing a good job.
Right.
Just manage the teams that you now have well.
And
like, I don't want to see either. I don't want to see, PlayStation or Xbox like fail. I want them to both be very, very healthy. Right. And I think Microsoft is in a good position right now to just hunker down and focus.
I agree.
You don't need to go around like buying shit.
Yeah, why are you at the supermarket
when
you keep an eye on the oven?
Yeah, you just like you got 3 gallons of milk in your fridge, dude. Like why are you out looking for milk again? I don't know.
It'll be interesting. I think that where I think the battlefield should take place is with second party exclusive deals and third party timed exclusives. That's how you play the game without removing a massive piece from the board for someone else. And I just think there's so many game makers, so many studios, so much money. You don't need to go and co-opt other cultures basically and inject them into yours. And if anything, Chris, what you were saying earlier about them keeping them separate will be good for Bethesda, but maybe bad for Microsoft, right? Maybe they need a little bit of Bethesda, because at least Bethesda ships. Now, Bethesda Game Studios is a little bit of a joke in my opinion, but the others ship. And
yeah,
so maybe they can learn something. I mean, think about how much id, Machine Games, and Arcane have done since Xbox put out a good first-party game. It's like, come on, man. And that's why I also think Halo, I don't know. You know, I'm curious, but I'm actually more confident in that game Redfall, which I think looks really cool, but we'll see. Apparently in closed alpha right now. I haven't heard too much about it.
Yeah. It leaked a little bit. We don't have to talk about that though.
Yeah, we'll leave that to the Dukes. But
yeah,
boys, that's all we have for this. It's a pretty short episode compared to the way we've been going lately on Sacred Symbols. Chris, do you have any closing thoughts?
No, I'm actually about to go download this Halo thing and see if it's a mess.
We'll have fun.
So yeah.
All right, we'll go support Chris on Twitch, of course. And Dustin, any closing thoughts?
No, just it's busy time. I'm excited. I'm also really excited for this Halo thing. Also, Diablo is out now, which I'm excited for that. I have Kenna, I have Tails. And there's just the Nintendo Direct where it is right after this, so it's a good time.
Yeah, right on. And I'm looking forward to delving into more of that Castlevania that they just announced. I'm just gonna say it, and if they
You're just gonna say it,
yeah. So, boys, thank you so much for your time. Thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support of all things Sacred Symbols, Last Stand Media, Knockback, Defining Duke, and so on and so forth. Remember, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia to support us over there. Get early ad-free access to all the shows, Sacred Symbols Plus access, the ability to submit questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas. And that's basically it. We'll see you next time for more Sacred Symbols. Until then, goodbye.
See ya.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.